Just for you, the listeners of Podcast Fandom, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial. Just go to audibletrial.com/podcastfandom. There are over 100,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. That's audibletrial.com/podcastfandom for your free audiobook download. Hey guys, welcome to Podcast Fandom, the official podcast for ProjectFandom.com. I'm your host, Nina.
And I'm Jon.
And we are back to talk about Game of Thrones Season 4, Episode 9, The Watchers on the Wall. So yeah, if you heard me kind of hesitate at the start of this, it's because my brain always has to catch up to where we are. I'm like, okay, which podcast is this again? So it's Podcast Fandom, Game of Thrones, The Watchers on the Wall, the penultimate episode of Season 4.
Yes, and the penultimate episode of every Game of Thrones season. This season had a lot to live up to.
Yeah, it really did. And I would have to say it was pretty damn good.
Yeah, I would say it was a success.
Yeah.
I mean, it's different from the previous, like last season, of course. But
right. The Red Wedding.
Yeah, and so, I mean, but it's a different kind of awesome, I felt like.
I absolutely agree. So, before we get into, our regular scene-by-scene recap, also, obviously, to point out that Megan's not joining us tonight, it's just Jon and myself. Quick reminder, if for whatever reason this might be your first time listening, Jon hasn't read the Game of Thrones books. I have, and I do not spoil things in terms of, things that have happened in the book that are still to happen on the show. But I will point out differences if something has already happened on the show that, again, won't spoil anything going forward. At the end of every episode, however, I do a spoiler section where I get feedback from other book readers and we talk about things and make predictions and stuff. That happens at the end of the show after our outro music. So if you're into spoilers, whether you've read the books or not, or if you're a book reader and you want to discuss that type of stuff, just stick around at the end of this podcast after you hear the theme music again, and it'll just be me talking about spoilers. If you want to discuss spoilers, please send them to me via email to Nina at projectfandom.com. That's Nina at projectfandom.com. Jon and Megan don't have access to that, obviously. It's my email address. And it'll be safe for you to send that and without spoiling the other co-hosts. So we always start off by saying our general thoughts about the episode. If there's some interesting tidbits or whatever, usually if I got something wrong in a prior episode, I'll correct that. So I have a little bit of all of that tonight before we get started. So I just want to point out that this episode was directed by Neil Marshall, who he's directed one other Game of Thrones episode. It was Blackwater, which was season 2, episode 9.
Which made a lot of sense.
Yeah, very similar in terms of tone. Obviously, it was a big battle sequence. That's probably one of the best episodes of the entire series. So, like you said, a lot to live up to. I think he did a really good job. He's also going to be directing the television show Constantine on NBC, which I believe premieres sometime in October. We've shared the trailers. There's been I think 2 or 3 trailers and some other bits of news about the show. Our contributor Chance is really excited for it. He's a big fan. I think he'll be, needless to say, he'll be covering it for our website. I don't know if we'll be doing a podcast on it, but he'll definitely be writing about it. I'm going to be watching it. I think, Jon, you're going to be watching it as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm one of the few who actually liked the Keanu Reeves movie too. So.
No, me too. No, I totally liked it. So yeah, I dig on that stuff. So so he's the director of that. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And in terms of what we thought, let me just make one quick correction. So we were talking about last week how cool it was that when Sam was upset because he thought, Gilly died in the attack on Molestown, or, the Herna baby, the high probability that they didn't make it, how the other brothers were just like trying to cheer him up and reminding him of what a survivor she is and all this. And I was like, yeah, that's a big contrast from how they were with him before. And I was like, well, maybe those were different guys. And it wasn't. It was Grenn and Ed who were out there with Sam beyond the wall digging the latrines when he was going on and on about Gilly. And he's like, you know what the interesting thing about her is? And I think it was Ed who was like, the interesting thing is that she even bothers to talk to you, So I love that it's even better that it was the same guys, because I think that was a nice show of an evolution of their relationship,
Yeah, they became brothers, and then that became even more clear in this episode.
Exactly. So so I thought that was an important. I know there's a little thing to correct, but in terms of like you just said, what happened in this episode, I thought it was an important distinction to make, a correction to make. So, John, what did you think of this episode overall?
I think this is awesome. I mean, it is very different, and it feels disconnected from the rest of the world, obviously, but we know it's not. I mean, we know like there are implications, even though you don't really get a lot of it. Like with Blackwater, while that battle was going on, you got some scenes that felt like they were connected to the outside world. Where here, it was kind of like an isolated incident at the wall. But still, I mean, it was awesome, and even and especially like with the elephants or the mammoths or whatever, this really felt like the Battle of Thermopylae, like 300.
It was. I called them snuffleupaguses.
But they were definitely not imaginary.
Right. They were truly there.
Yeah, but it feels like it's like that, except for it's the opposite, where the side with the higher number is the one that's well trained. Yeah. Like there's no reason for the lower number to win, because they're not even as well trained as the higher number. It's a very interesting dynamic in that sense, where it really matters that they have this wall. Right. Because that's the only way that they have any chance.
And I feel like you're right. It does feel kind of disconnected from the rest of the Game of Thrones universe and all the other things that we know have, happened and are currently happening, particularly like last week's trial by combat. It just seems like two different worlds. And I think I mentioned that before in the episode where we saw the White Walker turning the baby. And I said, it just blows my mind that in a world where this is going on, Cersei's sitting up in the castle plotting, you know what I mean? Like, and it just feels like it's two different universes. But I think that it's good that it feels disconnected, because they are disconnected. There are a lot of people who did not like this episode. They felt like it was filler. They felt like it was boring, like they just didn't care. And I get that to an extent. Like if it's not your thing, then you're just not going to be as invested. So if you don't like, let's say, sword fights and like if that's not your thing, if that's not an aspect of the show you enjoy, then you're probably not going to enjoy a show or an episode that's like 90% that. So I get that. For instance, we've talked about this on other podcasts. There are certain things that, I don't like car chases. So I can love a movie, but if you get into a car chase that lasts like more than a minute and a half, I get bored. Like my mind wanders. So I get it.
So like, you like Steve McQueen, but you're not going to watch Bullet.
Right, exactly. So, but I think that what people are, but it's kind of fitting, I think, that people feel that way, because some viewers feel the way some of the characters do. Like, what's happening at the wall is just not that important. They don't understand the gravity of the situation. And Maester Aemon sent out those ravens at the end of last season asking for help, and no one has sent them anything. Like, nobody is taking this seriously. And so, in a way, it kind of shocks me that the viewers feel the way the characters do, because we're privy to all the information. So it's like, how can you not see how important this is? But on the other hand, I kind of get it. Like, they just didn't. And then I think with last week's episode ending, the way it did with Oberyn's death, people and the fate of Tyrion is like hanging in the balance. It's like, I think people really wanted to get to that. So I understand being let down that you feel like it's another week you have to wait. But still, this episode was so well done that, man, I mean, it's not like I say, if you just don't enjoy this type of stuff, then this isn't for you. But I thought it was really well done. And the one last thing I'll say before we jump into the scene by scene recap that I thought what was done really well was and that I think what I would imagine, I don't direct anything, but I would imagine that it's probably difficult to direct something like this and make it kind of feel that it has a flow and that people have an understanding of the landscape and where everyone is and how this is situated. And I think he did a lot of overhead shots that really kind of put you in place. Do you know what I mean? And you can see
Yeah.
where these things, where people were and how they were situated and why this is important and how this would need to play out. And then, of course, there's that tracking shot, which I've watched.
Yeah.
This episode has been on in my house on a loop in my bedroom all day. Honestly,
Yeah.
all day.
And especially like when you have something like that wall, which is so huge. Like I don't think it's easy to. It's not easy. I mean, even though I don't direct anything, I know it's not easy to capture that kind of scale.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I think I mentioned on the review of Godzilla on Project Fandom where the scale in that movie is awesome, and it's the same way here. Is like you understand how large that wall is, and there are different levels. Like you see the giants and you see the mammoths and then you see the smaller people.
Yeah.
So you see all of these things and they all interact with each other, so you know how large everything is. And for that to make sense is an achievement on the part of the show.
I agree. Okay, so let's jump into the scene by scene recap. This episode begins with Jon and Sam on the wall, and Sam is pretty sure he's going to die a lot sooner than he would like, he says, and he wants to know what it's like to be with a woman. I love how Jon's like, what was she like? She had red hair. Oh, really? How big were her feet? Like, Sam is like, you know what I mean? Like, give me the details. And so there's some talk of Sam is basically like,
I just got the 40-year-old virgin where he's like, they feel like bags of sand.
Yes. And it's funny because I think they had a conversation like this before they'd taken their oath, and he was asking had he ever like been with a woman, and Jon was saying that he hadn't, but like not all the way. But he starts talking about making out with Roz. Because remember, she was at the brothel near Winterfell at first. That's where she, grew up or whatever. And he was talking about her, and Sam wanted to know what her boobs felt like. It was so funny. Sam starts pointing out that technically, when they take their vows, they don't really vow not to sleep with women. They vow not to get married and, own any lands. They vow not to father children. But there's like a bit of a technicality there. Like if you interpret it, and I love that Jon is like, yeah, Alliser Thorne really doesn't strike me as the kind that gives a shit about like interpretations. Like he's so you try that shit if you want to.
I feel like that Tyrion needed Sam to be his lawyer.
Right.
He's so good at the small print.
Yeah. So they're going to another section of the wall to continue their watch, and Jon tells Sam to go get some sleep and that he'll do the rest on his own. I'm sure we've seen it before, but this is the first time I really noticed, and that's saying something for me as someone who admitted that I've seen every episode of every season at least 5 times. And for some reason, I don't remember what that horn looked like. But I really noticed it in this episode, in this scene in particular, and I was like, those horns are pretty badass. I like the way they look.
Because they play a prominent role in this episode.
Yeah. So, but even before he blew it, like, when the shit started happening, I was just like, I don't think I've ever noticed a horn before.
No matter when he started blowing it, you're like, there's that horn again.
Yeah. So, and then Jon's left alone, but not really, because there's an owl atop the wall near him, and we see that it's actually being, the warg that belongs to the Fens is actually warging into that owl and keeping an eye on what's going on. And we learn later that's how they're going to become aware of when, this biggest fire the North has ever seen actually is finally lit. And so while the warg is doing his thing, Ygritte and Tormund and Stur and the other Fens and wildlings are sitting around a fire, and Ygritte's sharpening her arrows. And is Tormund talking about fucking a bear? Is he starting to tell some story where he wants people to believe he was going to or did fuck a bear?
I didn't really catch that as he was saying it, but then she was like, "Nobody cares if you fuck the bear." So I guess he was saying
Yeah,
that.
because he was like, "Did I ever tell you about Sheila?" And she was like, "Yes." Like, which is normally like anyone else would take that as, "Oh, well, then I'll just shut up now." But he kept going, and he was like, he said something like, "She was nice and soft down below." But she had claws. She was a ferocious beast. And I'm like, what is he? And then that's where she was like, we all know you didn't fuck a bear. I know you didn't fuck a bear. You know you did. And I'm like, was he about to tell a story about fucking a bear?
It's like, well, I kind of want to hear that.
I don't know. So listen, if you're a book reader or if you have a better insight into this conversation and you know you can answer this for us, please let us know. Because I was like, I don't remember this from the book. I am not down with this shit. I don't want to hear about this. So
That makes me think that George R. R. Martin has written this scene before, like where they actually did have sex, where he did fuck a bear.
Oh, Jesus. So Egret basically just wants to get down to business. All she wants to do is sharpen her arrows and imagine them going into the hearts of crows. And then she talks about, she, touches on a little bit. This is another thing. I was talking to some people in a Game of Thrones discussion group that our friend Heather has, and there were some people on Twitter who really didn't understand why the wildlings were doing this. Like, if you've lived over on the other side for thousands of years or hundreds of years, why are they so suddenly wanting to come south of the wall? They don't want to bend the knee. They call themselves free folks. So why do they want to? And it's, well, basically because of the White Walkers. Like they said before, no one's seen them in 1,000 years. The series begins with them apparently, out and about and fucking shit up. And Mance has managed to tell nearly 100 warring tribes beyond the wall that they need to work together or else they're all going to die. They need to work together to get over that wall so that they can be safe. So that's why they're doing it. But Egret in this conversation also points out that, 1,000 years ago, they put up this wall and they say, we stay over here and you stay over there. And then they come over here and they hunt us when they want to. So I thought that was really interesting. And I think it was at one point in an earlier season where Tyrion even pointed out, it's just I think he said to Cersei something about, like, it's just luck who's born on one side of the wall or other,
And I love that line of, like, they put up that wall 1,000 years ago, and I love that because that's exposition where we didn't have to see him actually tell her that.
Right.
Like, and it's just, she didn't have to be told that. Like, she was told that clearly because she wasn't there 1,000 years ago. So, like, and all of them have been brought up. Like, it seems like by Mance, that's his name, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he's the one who's riling everyone up, and to get them to go across the wall, and he's using this rhetoric that's riling them up about how they put this wall up, and I love the way that she just delivers that like someone who has been told that 1,000 times before,
right?
Like to justify her and all of their actions. I love that.
And then Stir, I'm hoping that's the way you pronounce it. He's the lead. Then he starts talking about her ginger minge. Ew.
Yeah, ooh, yeah.
I was like, have you ever heard a vagina referred to as a minge? Did the show make that up, or is that like a thing?
No, I can say I have heard that before. Yes.
Really? I know when he was like the ginger minge, she was like, "Have you been thinking about my ginger minge and how it would taste?" And I was like, "Okay, can everybody just sit down and shut the fuck up and stop talking about her minge? Because I really don't want to think about her minge as it's been running across, sacking cities and doing it. Like, they don't strike me as the cleanest people. I really don't want to think about Egret's minge. I don't."
Yeah, let's go back to the bear.
Yeah, please. I would much rather talk about Tormund fucking a bear than talk about Egret's minge. So, so then
you said it so many times.
I know it's like
I had mixed feelings about Egret in this scene because I liked it. This is what I liked about her when she was with Jon Snow, and I liked she was this badass who doesn't really take anything off of anyone. Mm-hmm. But then she's talking about killing Jon Snow, so I'm like, I can't like that.
Yeah.
but I liked her attitude, and that's the character that I like.
Yeah, there's something about her.
I was gonna say that's like with the scene with Tyrion where he was talking about their cousin Orson, and I was like I said that's a scene when you say goodbye to a character, like they get that one last scene where you find out exactly what they're about.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and with Ygritte this felt like that kind of scene
Well,
where this tells you exactly what she's about.
yeah,
In this one
there's
scene.
something about her that I feel like is very real. Like she's definitely larger than life, like right, like anybody you would know in real life, in terms of like, her philosophy and how the free folk raise their women and her skills as a fighter and her attitude towards war and fighting and living and dying and all that. But I think when it comes down to it, her relationship with John, I think it's really telling when she told him, I know your secret. You did not give up those vows. Like, you're still a crow at heart. Like, she basically told him, I get it. You have a different plan. You are still a crow. But I'm your woman now, and you will be faithful to me. So I don't care about all this other shit, but you don't lie to
faithful
me.
to my faithful to my men.
Yes, faithful to my minge, or I think she says she would cut off his cock and balls and wear it around her neck. So, yeah, so I like that that's very real, where it's like, it almost reminds me of like when a woman starts dating a man that he was cheating on his current person to be with her. And then when they're together and exclusive, you always hear people say, well, if he did that to somebody else to be with you, what makes you think he won't do it to you? And they're always like, people think, well, it won't happen to me, or I'm different, or I'm special, or I can change him. And that's what I feel like Ygritte was a little bit. She was like, I know that you're still a crow, but what I want, because I am yours and you are mine, and you will be faithful to your woman because I'm your woman now, that should trump everything else. And I think she was so hurt when he said, I got to go back. You remember and then she put the arrows in his ass. So I think that was it for her. It was just and so people, I mean, we joked about it. I even said it in my recap, like a woman scorn, ha ha ha. But it was the epitome of that. Like that's really what it was. She kind of, I don't think that she cared that he was never really, he gave up his vows to the Night's Watch. It was that he lied to her and he chose them over her. And so that was her thing. I think that she was just like going to kill any and everyone to get to him and prove that she could kill him, which she didn't do before. And as we see, she couldn't, because she could have put an arrow in his back before he even turned around. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. So
Yeah.
John is
she's kind of like in a movie like Goodfellas or something, where a guy's in a gang, and then he gets with a woman, and then she's like, "You're gonna leave the gang, and you're gonna be with me because you're done with that life."
Mhm.
And then he's like, "Okay," and then he doesn't, and that's what it's kind of like what Jon Snow did to her.
So she tells them all that John is hers to kill. When they finally, go to Castle Black, she wants to be the one to kill him, and then we get a quick shot of Gilly hustling by with her baby, looking over her shoulder, getting on the good foot to get her ass to Castle Black. And I will say that I get that. I think, in terms of maybe what it would cost, or or not the difficulty, because I'm sure it wouldn't be difficult to do, but just in terms of whether or not it was necessarily needed to do, it would have been harder, I think, to do than what they did. But I would have liked to have seen them maybe more of a pan away, where we get that she's relatively close to where they are, but not like walking right along the fucking ridge where any of them could look up at any moment, or her baby could wake up and start crying. I was just like, really? That's the only way you could have gotten past them, is to be right above them?
That was a bit of a Scooby-Doo moment.
Yes!
It's just just walking right by them.
And I mean, there's so many of them that I can't imagine that one of them didn't see her. It would be one thing if it was a smaller group and you think the odds, but the fact that there were so many of them and she was so close, that I was just like, okay, Game of Thrones. I would have preferred they panned a little further away, but I love the fact that we saw that. So I'll talk about it when we get to it. Because there was something that we talked about, or I talked about in the spoiler section last week, and now that it's happened, I can bring it up. So back at Castle Black, Sam doesn't go to bed. He goes to the library, and he's reading up on the wildlings. Maester Aemon comes in, and he tells him, love is the death of duty. And and he's, because he's saying, you love Gilly, and he's like, no, I don't. And he's like, yeah, this is why you've abandoned your post to read up on all the ways, all the things that the wildlings have probably done to her, you know. And then there's brief talk of Maester Aemon talking about when before he swore, took the black. He was, Aemon Targaryen, in line to be king, and lots of women tried to get his attention, and one succeeded in particular. And even though now he's old and blind, he can still see her and like what she looked like and what she, smelled like and all that stuff.
I loved this because the actor who played, I don't know the old guy's name, but whatever his name is, I felt like he did a really good job because he sold me on his lost love. Like, I feel like that actor actually had a lost love that he was remembering in that scene.
Yeah, see, I think he did a good job too. Let me just end the scene. So he sends tells Sam to go off to bed. This is the one scene that I felt like I could have done without. Like, everything else, I'm not one of those people. Like, last week, everybody was just like, why are we taking so long to get to the trial by combat? When it was the wedding, why are we taking so long to get to? I am not one of those people. I like all the stuff beforehand, maybe because I've read the book, so I know what's important and why these things are needed. Do you know what I mean? And how this is the only possible time they could set this up, because I know what's going to happen next week and, the episode after that. So maybe that has something to do with it. But I will say this is the one scene where I felt like went on just a little too long. And other than the fact that Sam was reading up on wildling attacks, kind of like that. You think you want to know, but you don't want to know, because he was pretty sure Gilly was dead. That part was fine, but this part with Maester Aemon, as much as I like him and I like the actor, I just felt like this was unnecessary, because in the grand scheme of things, at the end of it, it just really didn't seem to serve a purpose other than to kill some time.
Well, I felt like it did. To me, it felt like it served a purpose in that he was, because Sam, even now, was not admitting that he was in love with Gilly. Like, he wasn't admitting that about himself. And so I feel like this did push him over that edge. So then right after this, he sees her and he's like, I'm never leaving you again.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like that was...
I see. I guess I feel like I see what you're saying, and I think that you're right that is probably what the purpose was. But I don't know that the audience needed to see that. I think we were all pretty much. I think we got that. Do you know what I mean? And I think that if they didn't have that conversation, the fact that she showed up there after he was sure she was dead, I think he would have had the same reaction. That would have been enough for him to stop playing games and just being like, okay, I'm not sending you away again. I'm going to take care of you. Like, do you know what I mean? I don't think he needed that conversation to do that. I think just seeing her again. So
yeah, I don't think they needed that scene, but I think because it was a good scene, I think it was a good scene that I think was worth throwing it in there.
And at the end of it, I will say that this episode was short. It was shorter than the others. So just knowing that it was short, I appreciate that scene a little bit less. That's all I'm saying. I liked the line though when he said, "You can imagine all these terrible things that they did, but you can't think about me being a young man in love." Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah. So when Sam leaves, he hears Gilly's at the gate. She's pleading to be let in. Pyp won't let her in because he has orders. Sam's balls finally drop, and he's like, "Fuck your orders." Pyp, open the fucking gate.
Yeah, I loved it. Sam was awesome in this episode.
Yeah, he really was. And I like that they didn't have him doing things that were necessary. There were some things he did that weren't very Sam-like, but there wasn't... I wouldn't have bought it if all of a sudden he was wielding a sword and, like, kicking ass. I feel like he did the things that Sam could do. He can handle running to open a door. So, he may not be able to handle, sending the fucking ravens like he's supposed to. But I said last week, I have been waiting for Sam to turn a corner. And again, I've read the books. I'm not going to spoil anything. I hope this lasts. I hope this new and improved Sam lasts. I've been waiting for him to turn a corner, and I'm glad that they did this. And I think it was all believable things that he could do. It wasn't like all of a sudden he's, proficient with a sword, and I wouldn't have bought that.
Yeah. Yeah, like when the later scene where he's trading the guy and when he's dying, like that was a very Sam. That felt like a very Sam moment.
So they let her in, and he tells Gilly that she's like, "Don't send me away," and he's like, "I'm not going to. I promise. Where from now on, wherever you go, I'm gonna be." And then this conversation is cut short with the horns. Um, and we see that the warg, who is, in the owl, he sees something beyond the wall and he kind of wargs out of the owl and tells the others, the thens and the wildlings, that it's time. And then John, which I thought was a really great shot, goes to one of the edge of the wall. He looks out north of it and there's just this massive fire.
Yeah.
Like, Mance wasn't fucking around. And I feel like that is something that, you know, they teased since last season. I'm gonna like the biggest fire the North has ever seen, and we've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and it was like, yeah, that's a fire. It's like that Eddie
Yeah.
Murphy skit. Like, yeah, that's a fire.
Yeah,
Um,
and you said the shot. It felt like it went briefly into shaky cam
mm,
when the camera panned up over John's head and
mm,
it sees the fire out in the distance. It's a little shaky. It felt very visceral. I feel
mm,
like and like I think it was last week when all that wind was blowing. I love wind scenes
mm,
because it puts you into the scene and it makes it feel visceral, like you're actually there.
yeah.
And that's what this moment where you see this fire, you actually feel like you're on top of this wall looking out into a great distance and you see this such a huge fire out there.
And I will tell you that when he was standing, like it wasn't just like at the edge of the wall, but he went out like almost like on this little plank. And I was like, there ain't no fucking way I'd be standing on that thing. You better take a couple of steps back. But it looked
Yeah,
good. And then there's
it's like
lots of,
it's like going out on that walkway on over the Grand Canyon, where that
yeah.
glass walkway. It's like I ain't going out there.
No, mm-mm.
No,
It looks really good from right where I'm standing. And then there's lots of horns blowing. I thought that was funny because we know that they have like a signal, like so what one horn mean and two horns, and it's like there's one for wildlings when they see wildlings kind of close to the wall, two when rangers are returning, and three is like White Walker shit is getting real. This run. But this one was like six. I mean, he just did not stop blowing that horn. I guess
it's
that
like
means
it's Louis Armstrong, isn't it?
yes, yeah, he was just not letting up. I think he was just scared. He just kept, he didn't know what else to do. He was just blowing the horn, making sure everybody heard. So Alistair's standing above, atop the wall with John, and he admits that he was wrong. That they should have sealed up the tunnel when he had the time, telling John that you can say it, that you were right. John's kind of cool though. He just basically says, it was a tough decision either way.
And
And
I love that because then go ahead.
Oh, and then he tells him, he talks about what it means to be a leader. When you're a leader, there's always some twat with a loud mouth, second guessing what you're doing. And if you listen to that, if you always listen to that, pretty soon you start to second guess yourself. And as a leader, the moment you start second guessing yourself, then you're dead. The loudmouth twat is dead. Everybody's dead. And I like that because I do think that even though there is some, he got issues with John. Like he didn't like John from the beginning, and he called him Lord Snow basically to fuck with him. But what he was saying was true. Now, I don't think that's 100% the reason why he basically shot down John's ideas because where they were coming from John. But I do think that he had a really good point where you have to make a decision and you have to stick to it sometimes because the moment you start doing that, like I really I said in my recap, I started to like Alliser, but that's actually not accurate. I just didn't hate him as much in this scene. And then
Yeah,
later,
yeah, because and this I love that because when Jon Snow was trying to be nice and he was like, "You can't be nice when you're a leader," and that's basically what he was. He shot back at him, and
uh-huh.
it's like I feel like from in this scene, this is like the first scene where Jon Snow is being groomed as a leader.
Hmm.
Like he's being taught you can't do that. Like, it
Yeah.
feels, and then throughout the rest of the episode, he is a leader. And he becomes the leader of everyone here at Castle Black. I mean,
So
that's basically what he is now.
Alliser tells him that they're not dying tonight. They are. He's like, we're gonna do this as long as it takes you guys to do your jobs and beat them back. He goes, and then you can go right back to hating me, and I can go right back to wishing your wildling whore had finished the job. And I was like, yeah, see, he wasn't going to let this moment pass. Like, he wasn't going to let us think that he wasn't a complete dick. So then Sam locks
and that felt like a moment where Jon Snow was going to be like, I don't hate you. What are you talking about?
Jon was like, true that. You're right. So Sam locks Gilly away downstairs in this like supply closet kind of place, and like a pantry or something. She wants him to stay. And I was like, girl, if you don't let that man go be a damn man, I mean, I was like, do you know how long it's taken us to get Sam to this fucking point where he's just not a pussy, and now he's ready to man up and do what needs to be done, and you're trying to get him to stay in there with you. I was like, girl, leave him, stop being a nag. You ain't even got the ring yet. Let him go do what he needs to do. And I hate it when she said this to him. I mean, I kind of got what she meant. But at the same time, it was like, ouch, when she goes, you won't matter up there, but you will in here. It's like, oh, Gilly. But I loved it because he told him, I'm going to go help my brother. She goes, how? And I was like, damn, girl. She's like, what can you do?
But it is accurate. I mean, up to this point, Sam, I mean, that is an accurate statement about Sam.
Yeah, it is. But damn, girl, come on. I was like, we just got him built up. Don't kick him. Don't push him back down.
It's like she realized she already has him wrapped around her finger, so she can stop being nice.
Yeah. So he kisses her, and he leaves. It locks her in this room. Pyp is scared. He's up by the front of the gates that's facing south of the wall. And he's trying to, like, prepare the weapons and stuff. His hands are shaking. And I like this because Sam basically gives him a pep talk about, when he says something like, before I killed that White Walker, I didn't plan to kill it, but I knew I had to do something. Like, it was going to kill her and take the baby. And he talks about, like, when he said he wasn't Samwell Tarly, he was nothing. And when you're nothing, you don't think about losing or what you have to lose, You just do what you have to do.
I loved it.
Yeah, it was a really good talk. And then we see Ygritte is scouting.
But then he says, well, now you're scared now. Like, because he said, I wasn't scared when I was nothing. And it's like, well, you're scared now. And he's like, I'm not nothing anymore. I love that.
Yeah.
I felt, because that's character progression. Like, I felt like we needed to see the Sam that we've seen up to this point.
Oh, don't even get me started with character development. I argued with people today. They were like, this episode, there was nothing. I was like, really? There was so much character development, which we'll get into more. But Sam is just one of, I think, many character developments here. But anyway.
I felt like we had to see that Sam to appreciate the one we see in this episode.
Yeah.
Like, if we didn't see him be a pussy before, like, it wouldn't have meant as much for him to have now manned up.
Yeah. So Ygritte is scouting south of the wall, and she goes back and she sees Sam and Pyp, and she goes back to her group and she says, it's just a fat one, a little scrawny one. She's like, we got this. And Steer is like, okay, well, how long do you think it'll take us to get over the wall, like to scan it or whatever, scale the gates? And she goes, we'll be up and over before they even know what happened. So he's like, all right, time to kill some crows. They start rushing the gate. Meanwhile, north of the wall, there's some fucking giants on mammoths. Holy fucking shit! Like, I love this because you just see all the the different tribes and stuff, walking through the trees, like approaching the wall, and then they show you the giant's feet at first, and then the feet of the mammoth, and then the camera like pans up, and it's like, holy fucking shit, those are giants.
This felt like that fight, that battle in Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. Like the big fight.
Yeah.
Like, it felt like that. It was like the best part of that entire series.
Yeah, agreed.
In my opinion.
Agreed. So above, at the top of the wall, the north side of the wall, Alliser tells the archers to knock and everyone else hold. And then instead of knocking, they draw. And then poor Grenn drops this barrel. And Alliser's like, I said knock and hold, you cunts. That was probably one of my favorite lines. Like, there was some good stuff before this, but this was the moment where I just was like, oh, this is going to be good. Like, he was like, does knock mean draw? No. And they were like, no, sir. And he says, does hold mean drop shit? Like, they were like, no. He's like, all right, do y'all want to die tonight? Because I don't. I loved it. And before he...
Well, this was like when Arya was like, lots of people name their swords, and the Hound was like, yeah, lots of cunts.
Yes. He was like, between the twat talk early and the cunt, listen, I love really bad, dirty words, and I appreciate people who can use them and they sound right when they say them. And I got to tell you, he's an asshole, but I enjoyed him in this episode.
Like, he could probably say minge and it'd be okay.
Yeah, I might be able to handle Alliser talking about a ginger minge. So then before he can like continue to like jump in their asses, there's more horns, and then they rush up and they tell him, they're attacking the south gate, and he's like, now? And I was like, yeah, now? What the fuck you think? What did you think their plan was? Jon told you they plan on attacking us from both sides. You think the moment that Mance lights this fire, the ones on the south aren't coming to your door? Of course they are.
I mean, it felt like he still didn't believe just how many there were. Like, how can they be attacking over here and over there?
Right.
And it's like, because Jon Snow told you, they got like 100,000 people.
Right,
That's
but
why.
see, but the thing is, like, he told them that the 100,000 is the people north of the wall. And we'll get into this later. There were some people who were just like, and this is what we do on this podcast. We're going to talk about the good and the bad, and I'm going to bring up what, issues other people had that maybe we didn't. And if I agree, I agree. But if I saw something that makes your argument irrelevant, I'm going to let you know. And there were people who were just like, they shouldn't have survived that. And I'm like, you got to understand, nobody north of the wall penetrated. That giant was the closest anybody came from north of the wall, to getting through or over. The one south of the wall, I would believe that 103, if we want to be generous and say, I don't know, 80 to 90, considering how many men they had atop the wall and then the ones he sent to the inner gate, they can hold off Ygritte and Tormund and the other. Do you know what I mean? Like, that is believable. And we saw that they suffered some losses, but like Jon said at the end of the episode, it's not over. So, but anyway, so he tells them that he's going to go down. Alliser's going to go down, and he leaves Janis Slynt in charge.
Yeah, he's like, you have the wall. I love that.
He was like,
they say that.
He goes,
they say that
wait,
so many
what?
times.
Yeah. And then we see Ygritte as they're rushing. I love this because I love Tormund Giantsbane. And there was the episode where there was a couple of times they've done this. One when Jon was with them, and remember they were going to attack the guy who tends to the horses for the guys at the wall, and Jon did that thing where he hit his sword against the rock to scare the horses and warn the man they were coming. So we've seen Tormund run in that scene, and then the scene when they attacked Ollie's village, right, and killed his parents and all the other people. Tormund looks so funny when he runs. I don't know. And there is a picture, because we recap and review the show for our website. So I've had to go on the internet and find images, for the different episodes. And it's like almost every time I go to Google Images looking for a picture, there's that one image of him running. And it looks so funny because he has no neck. And he just looks like this big bushy red hair with all this like furry clothes on and no neck and this big beard. And he just runs funny. And again, he's running towards this gate and I just laughed. But the music is fantastic. That's the other thing. I think the score on this show, I know a lot of people don't watch it as much as I do, and I can sit there and say, oh yeah, this is the music they play when this happens, and this is the music but this is that, I don't know if it's specifically the wildling music or, but it's so good. And Ygritte I love this because
those giants are freaking scary, honestly.
Yeah, they really are. And so, okay, so wait, we're still south of the wall. So Ygritte, they're shooting flaming arrows at them. And I love this because Ygritte is taking them out of dead bodies of the wildlings that are falling around her and shooting them back at them and then dodging flaming arrows.
Yeah, I love that because she was just like, yep, sit to the side, and it goes right by her head. It wasn't super believable, but still,
right.
It was
but it looked good. It looked real. It's not believable that somebody could do it, but it looked believable when it was done. Like it was like, okay, So,
and that's something like you should maybe not shoot a flaming arrow, and maybe she won't be able to see it coming from a mile away.
Exactly. She wouldn't have been able to dodge it if you hadn't lit the shit on fire. So, up at the gate, Pyp can't hit anything. and he keeps missing, and he's like reloading his crossbow. Sam's helping him, and he tells him, Sam, I think we're gonna die. And Sam goes, if you keep missing, we will.
Yeah.
Sam had so many jokes last night. I loved it. So Tormund scales the gate. We see that start to happen. At this point, Alliser has reached the courtyard. He's come down and he gives this speech. And I loved it because it reminded me of Tyrion's Blackwater speech. Yeah, right? Like, there was a brave men knocking at our doors. Let's go kill them. He was like, those are Thins, hungry Thins, and they eat your flesh. Do you want to be in a Thin's belly tonight?
Yeah. But tonight we dine in hell. It was like 300.
Yeah. So he gives this speech, and I love it because right as he's gotten them riled up, they start breaching, the southern gate. And he says, with me now with me. And then we get to see why Alliser Thorne is the master at arms at the Castle Black. Why he trains the men to fight. Because holy fuck, he is a badass. I did not see that coming at all. Like, I think I might have even said last week, I don't know if I said it in the spoiler section or in the podcast proper, I was like, he has to die first. Like, because he's such a fucking hater and because he's such an asshole, all the things he's done in these past like 3 or 4 episodes, I was just like, God, I hope he dies first. I totally didn't even think that he was going to go out there and have me. Did you ever think you'd be cheering for him? I was cheering for him. He was so good.
I feel like I would be cheering for him because I was cheering for the people at the wall.
Yeah,
like he's on that team, even though he's the biggest asshole on the team.
Yeah,
he's on that team. So
Tormund actually gets up to where Pyp and Sam were, but they take off running, which is a legit strategy, I think. I think if I saw fucking Tormund Giant's Bane,
as we see, like, he throws another guy through the wall that was behind them.
Yeah,
so it was a good idea for them to run.
Yes, when he got up there, I love that you could see them, like, going out the back way. Like, they were like, fuck this shit. So
there's a better angle from over there.
Yes. Up top at the north side of the wall, Janice is being a little punk-ass bitch. He is so fucking, like, he's not motivating. He's just like, hurry it up. And I mean, I'm just like, he's like, I've commanded the city watch. And it's like, yeah, and now you're here like everybody else, motherfucker. Shut up. He was so awful. I hated him so much. So I was so grateful when Grenn came up and was like, sir, Alliser needs you downstairs.
I think he was supposed to be a bad leader so that we could see when he hands it off to Jon Snow that Jon Snow is a better leader.
Oh, I think we would have known that anyway. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? This is the guy that slit the baby's... Yeah, this is the guy who slit the baby's throat. And a man that slits a baby's throat is an asshole, is not brave. I would not have expected anything different from him. I love, though, because of the way he did it. Like, the second time I watched it, I realized Grenn really didn't even go anywhere. Like, do you know what I mean? It's kind of like when you see a show and somebody pretends their phone rings. like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, it vibrated in their pocket and you know it did. And it felt like that. I felt like he, like, walked away for a second and came back and was like, oh, I just got word. Alliser needs you downstairs. So this reminded me, too, of the thing with Joffrey. When Lancel came to get Joffrey and he was like, the queen says that you have to come in, and he goes, what exactly did my mother say? Did she say it was urgent? Like, because he wanted to go, but he needed something to help him save face. Do you know what I mean? I felt like this with Janice when he was just like, I'm needed downstairs. Okay, not going to question it, because he didn't want to be up there. And I hate this too when he was just like, when Jon is like, there are giants on mammoths, and he goes, there are no such thing as giants. I'm like, motherfucker, can you see? Like, like, what do you see down there?
He's like, those are just tall guys.
Yeah, I was like, this guy, I'm so glad. So yeah, so he leaves, Jon takes control, and then we see that the wildlings north of the wall have sent up some climbers. They're trying to scale the wall, and Jon says, it'll be dawn before they get up here. And Ed is like, how do you know? He goes, because I've done it. He goes, yeah, but I don't think you were in a rush like these guys were.
Yeah, it looks like they're in a bigger hurry than you were.
Mm-hmm. So Jon starts giving the order, knock, draw, loose, and they're firing their flaming arrows. And then a giant steps up and kneels to one knee. And I'm like, what did he use to make that super giant crossbow? I was like, oh my God, this was so great. He shoots off this arrow.
It was like an entire tree.
It was. And then it was right right? Because the way it was cut, it was such a quick cut. He fires two. The first one takes out like the little ceiling above the little parapet that John's on, or close to him, and then he yells at them to duck, and he fires another one, and it takes this one guy clear out across the courtyard. And I actually said to Donnie, I was like, "Was that John?" Because it happened so fast.
Yeah, it couldn't have been though. I thought it might have been too because it was right beside him.
Yeah, it was a guy right beside. Yeah, but the way it was so quick that I was just like, and then I just saw him go flying, and it was like this kind of really quick tracking shot. So before he landed, I wondered, does John get like knocked unconscious? Like I was like, what are they doing here? And then when the guy landed on the catapult on the other side, and it was clear he was dead, I was like, oh, okay, that wasn't John.
It was great. Like the way that they did those huge arrows, though, because we've been watching so many small arrows unable to get up over the wall.
Oh yeah,
because they were just going up and hitting halfway up the wall, and so this guy steps up and he's like, "I'll do it," and he's like, "Phew," and it takes out the top of the wall. I was like, "That's so awesome," and that is another scale thing where you see that having a giant makes a difference. And that shot where he shoots that guy and he comes down and he stabs into the ground. That's another scale thing where you see he fell all the way from the top of that wall all the way down and stabbed into the ground. It was so cool.
So back in the courtyard, Stir is out there fucking shit up. Ygritte is too. Janice has made it down from the lift. He runs across the courtyard, goes inside, goes to this room, unlocks it to hide, and we see that it is the room that Gilly is in, and they just kind of stare at each other.
And this is, I was like, oh no, she was right. He would make a difference here. Like he's going to do something to Gilly. Like I was afraid for her in that moment.
Oh, see, I wasn't, and I thought I saw you say that somewhere last night, and that like it didn't even cross my mind. And it's not like book knowledge because a lot of this is so different than it happens in the book. You know what I mean? Like, and honestly, I don't remember a lot of this battle except like the main points. But yeah, I just thought he looks like an asshole now. Like, you're like a little bitch. Yeah, go sit down. Like it didn't even. But I mean, I could see where you would think that, but it's just so funny. It didn't even cross my mind.
It was because earlier she had said you'll matter here and you won't matter. So I felt like this is her being proved right. That now Sam will come back and she'll be dead, and it's like something, or he will have raped her or something.
Yeah.
Or he will have killed that baby. I mean,
yeah, baby killer. So then we cut to the kitchen, and I love this because there's this one guy in the fucking kitchen, one of the Night's Watch, with this huge cleaver over his shoulder. And there, the wildlings run in, and he just leisurely strolls up and starts fucking people up with that cleaver. And I didn't know who the fuck that was. Like, when I first watched it, I was just like... The other thing, too, like, what I think is great with this is that because it's dark and there's so much going on, it's easy to, like, okay, who's who? But what I loved is that it's really clearly defined that men of the Night's Watch wear black, right? They're all in black. The Thens are bald-headed, and the wildlings themselves, we've seen their furry clothes kind of blends in with the snow, right? So it's bright. So it was easy to tell people apart. But for some reason in this kitchen scene, I was just like, that's a big cleaver. What's going on? So Aaron at Bald Move on their thread earlier today, we were talking about this episode. And I was like, who the fuck was that in the kitchen fucking shit up? Because he was great. And Aaron pointed out that he's a character from the book, which I completely forgot about. Oh my God. Actually, you know what? I probably should go look at the thing again. Give me a second. I may edit this for time because he said that it was, what he said and what I saw was actually not the same thing. My mind went a perverted route. Okay.
It's like three-fingered minge. What?
Wait, he said, Nina, I think it was meant to be three-finger Hob, head cook of Castle Black, he of the enormous cleaver. I responded, I totally read that as three-finger knob, head cock, and I thought enormous cleaver was a euphemism. So I swear, when I read that, I thought Aaron was just being a pervert. But no. But yeah, apparently he was the head cook at Castle Black, and he had this huge cleaver. So that's who that was. So I was like, I loved him. Good to see him killing people.
Yeah, it made sense that he has the cleaver, and he's like, you come into my kitchen, and you start making a mess. I'm making pancakes over here.
So So then back at the gate, Pyp actually finally nails someone, and he sits down and, because Sam's ducked down, and he's like, I got one, I killed one. And Sam goes, great, is it over?
Yeah, another great line.
And Pyp stands up to take another shot, and then he takes an arrow through the neck. Egret nails him. He falls into Sam's arms, and Sam tries to, like, you'll be okay, you'll be okay. Maester Aemon's going to come and fix you up and all this stuff, and we know that's not going to happen. And he dies in Sam's arms. This did not happen in the book. Pyp is still alive in the book. And so is another character that we'll get to in a moment. And the one thing that I feel like, and this doesn't bother me at all, like book people last night were like, oh, we're being spoiled because will he eventually die? And what I think this means is that either one, yeah, these are characters that eventually are going to die in the book, or I think more likely, though, is that they're not really going to have too much of a significance moving forward in the book. Do you know what I mean? So that it's okay that they're dead in the show, because in terms of the book, they're really just going to continue to be background characters, co-signing things that Jon say or disagreeing with Jon or whatever, but not really having any big significance going forward. So it's okay if they die in the show. Also, it kind of feels like you have to have named people, whether you remember their names or not, but like recognizable people that even if you just know him as the funny one or Jon's friend. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't seem realistic to me that this whole thing would go down and we not lose one person we recognize. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I feel like, I don't like it because I liked Pyp. I like the whole, Jon's little crew, but I'm okay with it just in terms of if you look at everybody else that could have died, I'm okay with it being Pyp. And
the way that they killed him in Sam's arms really helped the character of Sam.
Exactly. Yeah. So now we're back north side of the gate. They're dropping down these barrels. What I couldn't tell, so we see like these guys running up to the gate, these wildlings, and they drop down these barrels and they crash and they kill them, they take them out. But I couldn't tell what was in the barrels, or was it just the force of having these barrels, whether they're empty or not? Because they didn't like explode at this point; they just dropped.
They said they were full of oil. That's what when he said.
Okay, so that's what I would. But yeah, I knew that some of them were, because then we see later like one of them fucks up and blows himself.
Yeah.
But when these first barrels fell, like it didn't seem like anything came out of them. It looked to me like these guys just died because, the force of barrels coming down from hundreds of feet above your head, empty or otherwise. So that's the only thing I couldn't tell, like what that was about. But they dropped like 3 or 4 barrels, killed all these wildlings, and then the giants step up.
Yeah.
And one of them gets off of this mammoth. Holy fuck, when he got off the thing, he was still tall as the mammoth. Like, did you notice that?
He was looking at it in the eye. It was like,
yes! And then they go, and now this is the thing I found interesting. So he starts punching his way through like one of the openings, and we see he's just trying to clear room so he can like latch this chain up to it, and then put the other end on this latch that's on the saddle of this mammoth, and they're going to use their strength and the force of these mammoths to pull the gate down, right? I was surprised that they were as industrious as they were. Like, you think giants, you think kind of like, stupid. No, these motherfuckers had fashioned their own weapons. They understood the mechanics of things. I was like, I think I said on Twitter, I was like, this giant has done this before. Like, they had a plan going up to this gate.
He's trained.
Yeah. So as they're starting to pull the gate down, Jon tells Grenn to take 5 men and go man the inner gate, because he's like, that outer gate's not going to hold, which is exactly what he fucking told them a couple of weeks ago, and why they should fill and freeze the tunnel. So the reason at the time Alliser said they weren't going to do it was because that's their only way from Castle Black anyway to go north of the wall to range, right? But I'm like, why do you need to continue going north of the wall? Like, the White Walkers are coming. You know that this army is being gathered. He told you it's 100,000 men. I would think that you should seal that shit up and worry about ranging later. Like, if you ever need to go back beyond the wall. And that was the other thing. Like, I think I said to you guys on another podcast, maybe, it might have been, we used to do this old podcast. I'm not even going to say the name of it because I don't want people to go and look for it. But I think you remember we were covering the first season of Game of Thrones, and I think I even said, like, why are they going beyond the wall anyway? And it just seems to me like you're protected by this big wall. Stop taking your asses over there. Like, let them come to you. But they were like, no, they have to go do, like, scouting and see what they're up to and spy on them. I'd be like, they would fucking come to me. Especially if we're going above the wall, but beyond the wall, and either not coming back or coming back as whites. Do you know what I mean? Like, I would just stop going.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's like you only have a certain amount of people, and you already know you're expecting an attack. So right now, you don't want to go back out there and risk losing more people.
Yeah. So
it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it feels like I got what Alliser was saying about being a leader. You can't let a bunch of, like, opinions make you second guess yourself. But at the same time, this really would have been the better thing to do. So he sends Grenn plus 5 guys down to the inner gate. Grenn calls for Hill, Cooper, and 3 more. And then I just let out a sigh because I was like, Grenn's not coming back. It's like, this is not. And I was so sad because I really like him.
But he got a good death though.
He really did. Oh my God, this was probably one of the best scenes of the episode. So Alliser,
it was better than Pyp's death.
It really was. It definitely was. So down at the courtyard on the south side, Alliser sees Tormund fucking shit up and goes after him, which made me love. Well, okay, let me stop lying. It made me hate him a little bit less than I had previously. The fact that he went after the leader is such an opposite. Like, I think we said that Alliser and Janos are 2 assholes, but when it came down to doing what they do or what needs to be done, Alliser proved himself. And I love that he didn't shy away from the biggest, baddest. Like, Tormund has a reputation. Like, he looked at him and knew exactly who that was, how many crows he has killed, and he went after him, which made me appreciate Alliser even more. And then this fight between the two of them was great. He backhanded Tormund a couple of times. He, like, reached around this pole and kept fighting, but eventually he does get slashed across the abdomen and falls. They're like up on this walkway, and he kind of falls down, and then Tormund looks down, and you think he's either going to jump down after him or run down after him, but there's some, Night's Watchmen come up from behind, so he gets, distracted fighting them, and then some of the crows grab Tormund and Alliser, and start pulling him inside because he's wounded, and he's still yelling, "Man the fucking gate!" I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was he had a really nice episode here.
He really did.
It turned him around because, like you said, he was an asshole, and it's like, but you see, he is a leader. Like, he is that guy. He's a fighter, and later in the episode, you see that Jon Snow is kind of just like he is in terms of being a leader and a fighter. And like, because Jon Snow goes after the big guy too.
And I feel like when he gave the speech, but right before they breached, and he said, "With me now with me," when he was given that whole thing, I think that is a really hard thing to do and look convincing. Do you know what I mean? Like, that kind of, Braveheart, rallying the troops. You really got to be able to pull that off. And I think he did a really good job. Like, you could see, and Grenn did as well in the scene that we're about to talk about. Like, I think that's really hard to do, to convince people to, most likely go to your death, but to go out like a man, like to go out fighting. And he was very believable in everything he did from the moment he had that conversation with Jon at the top of the wall. He had a really good episode. And I think it's interesting. I read an interview with Neil Marshall, the director, and he was saying that the same thing happened when they did Blackwater, that it was raining ridiculously hard. And he says he thinks that they took it out digitally. That's a word I always have a hard time saying. So when Alliser is giving this big speech, they had to take all the rain out. And he's like, it's amazing how they did it because it was so thick and so heavy, like how hard it was raining. Okay, so then Sam leaves Pyp's dead body. He grabs the crossbow. He makes his way through the courtyard. He kills a Thin by the hair of his chinny chin chin.
Yeah, just barely. He's like fumbling, and he's like shoots it right as it's about to get him.
He meets Grenn and the other guys that they're on their way to the inner gate, and he tells them, "We need more men down here." And they're like, "Yeah, well, we have to go to the gate. You need to go tell Jon he's in charge." So Sam gets in the lift, and he hypes up little boy Ollie, who's like freaking out. Earlier we saw Stir killing men like right near him to the point where the blood was splashing on this poor kid, and he's just hiding.
I felt I feel like this scene is a good, like you said earlier, where Sam didn't start doing things that were un-Sam-like.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a good example of that, where he yelled at Ollie, he's like, get me to the top.
Yeah.
But then Ollie didn't respond to that. So
Yeah.
Sam was like, he became Sam again. He's like, oh, it's just your name's Ollie, right? Well,
yeah.
come on. And then as he's pulling him up, he's like, now fight him.
Yeah.
He turns into a little bit to the new Sam at the end.
So he tells him to help him get to the top, wait for the signal to bring them back down again. And he tells him as the lift is going up, he tells him to find a weapon and fight them. And then we see Ollie eyes this crossbow that's down by his feet. So then north of the wall, so they drop down. Now these are the barrels that you could tell, like they're oils in them, and they light them on fire, and they drop and they explode. And when that happens, the mammoth takes the fuck off. The mammoth ain't about that life. He was like, look, ain't nobody tell me there was going to be exploding barrels up my ass. And he takes off and then he's like, did you notice he was like crushing these wildlings as he was running and dragging another? So one of the giants goes running off like, hey, get back here, we need you. And he takes an arrow to the
like, shit.
Yes. It kind of right like when you see like in TV shows where somebody has like their car like trying to change the tire, but they don't put it like, have it set properly, and the car just goes rolling down the hill or something. But yeah, so the giant that goes running off takes an arrow in the back. And I'm like, now that was a little, they used like that catapult thing. That wasn't just like a regular archer. Because there's no fucking way a regular arrow on a regular bow from that high up would take out a giant like that. I feel like there was a quick shot where you saw them rigging something on one of those catapults that they use for the barrels, and they let it go, and then next thing you know, this giant got this arrow in his back. But I was like, conceivably, like, how big could that have been? But I mean, it killed him, so I don't know if that was one of those, like, I'm not good at science. I don't know if that was something because of the velocity, you know what I mean? Like how fast it was going, how high it was going. It did more damage than it maybe normally would have. But anyway, the giant goes down and his buddy screams. And he's like, you know what? Fuck this shit. I'm done fucking around with y'all in this gate. Y'all done killed my dude. My mammoth is run off. And he starts using just his brute strength to lift the gate. And at this point, I was really hoping we got some shots of like some wildlings trying to run under and him maybe losing his grip and that gate coming down. I really thought that was going to happen.
Then he just starts picking it up again.
Yes.
And it has like wildling parts dripping off.
Yes. He's just like, oops, my bad. I lost my grip. It's slippery. Okay. It's icy. So, where was I? Okay. So yeah. So then he starts lifting it up. And then one guy atop the wall fucks up and like ignites the barrel before it drops. Doesn't he fall too, I think? I
think that it explodes.
Because he was like stabbing it, right?
Yeah, it causes one of the other guys to fall.
Yeah. So then Sam makes it up at the top. He gets Jon. He tells him, "Listen, Alliser's down. We need help down there." Jon's going to go down. He leaves Delores Ed in charge, and he tells him, drop more flaming, barrels if you need to, and if you need be, drop the scythe. And I'm like, the what? Okay. So
I have to say, I loved the way that they kept saying the wall is yours, or you have the wall, or however they say it, because it felt like they were just following what the guy before them did. It's like they didn't know, like they wouldn't. I don't feel like they would have, like any of them would have known after Alliser, like to say it that way.
Oh no, they did. That's part of their training.
Oh,
but that's the other thing. I think I was listening to Bald News Insta-Take where they were just like, why did they need someone to yell, knock, draw, loose? Like, don't they know how to fire? And I don't know if they were just being funny, but I was just like, are they seriously don't know why? Because it's like military. Like, that's sure all the guys know how to fire the weapons. You've spent, years training them how to assemble and clean and use and fire and target and all that stuff. Of course they do. But that's the whole point of having the leader, for him to look out and say, wait, you know what I mean? Like someone to gauge, okay, now you do it. Because if you'd have shot it, 10 seconds before, it wouldn't have landed. Or, you know what I mean? Like it wouldn't have connected or whatever. And it's the whole military aspect of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't have like one guy shoot now and then another guy and then another, because it's not a united front. It's not as strong as everyone doing it at one time.
Right. But no, they totally, the wall is yours. That's like what they say when they hand it off. the watch and all that stuff. So he tells him to lower the scythe if need be, and he leaves. And then at the gate, the inner gate, the giant makes his way in, and one of the guys in particular is like, "Look, I'm a ninth born son. I ain't signed up for this shit. Like, I just came here not to get disinherited or murdered or, like, I stole some bread and I chose this over losing a hand." Like, he's like, "I didn't sign up for this shit." And he's ready to go. And Grenn starts reciting their oath. And then they all start reciting it as they prepare themselves for this giant that's barreling down the tunnel at them. And but as they connect, the scene just ends. And
I felt like this is another thing that really showed the scale of that wall, because we've seen the height, but now the thickness, because that giant was running, and it's a giant making huge strides, and it takes them like 2 minutes to get there, and they can say all these lines before the giant even gets there. Then they draw their swords finally. It's like 10 minutes later. That's a huge freaking wall.
And they end it, the end of it is we hold the gate. Oh man. So that was rough. That got me in the feels. So as the lift is going down with Jon and Sam and some of the other guys that I think Jon took like 3 others with him, he is telling Sam that he doesn't want him out there. And Sam feels like Jon's going to need him. And he hands Sam a key. Jon hands Sam a key and says, "I need him more than I need you." So I must have been tweeting at this part. So I didn't hear or see this. So I didn't know that he had handed him a key. So later, when Sam goes and opens the door, I was like, "Fuck yes, Sam." And my husband goes, "That's the key he gave him." I was like, "Oh," and it sucks like when you miss stuff like that because you don't know like what you would have thought. So the few times I've watched it since then, I was trying to think to myself, if I had seen this, would I have gotten it? Would I have gotten that he was giving him the key for Goes? I think I probably would have, but I don't know. I don't know that I would have. I would hope. I kind of wish that you didn't. Good. I was just going to say, I kind of wish that they almost didn't do that. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's some times where I feel like it's not totally necessary because it's kind of cool to be, like, I liked being shocked. Like, when he was running and he goes to open, I'm like, is he going back to Gilly? Where the fuck is he going?
I feel like that scene, they may have put that in there to show that Jon is kind of Allistering out a little bit there in that moment where he's like, "I need him more than I need you." He's callous in that moment to Sam, someone who is his friend.
So when he said that to him, what did you think he meant? Or you just didn't know? You didn't get it?
I didn't know. I just thought he's being an asshole right now. I don't need about you, Sam. What are you doing?
Okay, so then the lift, they get down, it opens. Jon does this rolling thing out of, comes with this, he rolls out in this like low crouching stance of the lift.
He jumped when it was like 10 feet still in the air.
Yeah!
Like, what are you doing? You're going to break your leg and just be out of the fight for quickly.
I don't know why he did it, but it looks so fucking cool I didn't care. And then in my notes, I just have Jon is the motherfucking man. Great tracking shot. So this is the tracking shot where we see Jon take out a couple of guys and then he stops to kind of survey everything before he starts fighting another guy on the stairs. And then the camera just pans around the entire courtyard. We see Ygritte up on one of the walkways, fights, letting loose arrows. We see Stir killing guys down below. We see Tormund laughing. And just like I love him so much. I know he's the bad guy, but I love him so much. I love the fact that he's like with an arrow in his back and he is still like fucking shit up. And it just really, this shot was so good. And then the way the music changed, because it was almost like that Jaws, like dun 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 dun, you know what I mean? Like that kind of pace.
So it was very reminiscent of the Avengers, honestly. It was like that scene, that big huge scene. It felt like the show really took a page out of that book.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it so much to the point where I was watching it one final time before we recorded, specifically to take podcast notes, not just to geek out over it. And my husband came in from work and he brought dinner and he sat down on the bed and he goes, "Did I miss the shot? Because I want to see that again." And I was like, "No, it's coming." He's like, "Oh, that's right, when Jon gets downstairs, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, you didn't miss it," because it was so good. Oh my God, I loved it so much. So, and then we see Sam open a door. This like flaming arrow hits the door right above his head. He opens the door and he says, we need you, boy. And it's Ghost. And Ghost runs out and immediately just starts eating some guy's neck. Like,
yeah. And like we only see
good.
Yeah, it was. We only see him do like one time, but seeing it that one time, it's not the only time he does it.
Of course not. And it's the thing, like, people complained about that. Was like, we only saw him kill one person. It's like, first of all, CGI, motherfuckers. Like, listen, this episode was probably already super expensive. There were 2 fucking giants and a mammoth. There's all this, fighting and special effects, and the wall. Anytime they show the wall, it's expensive because that whole thing is CGI. So the scythe scene later, relax, all right? I think we can, anyone with half a brain knows that Ghost was out there getting his belly full.
He got that one guy, and then he just stopped. He's like, my job's done.
No, right, of course not. So, so I already said that Tormund has an arrow in his back. He's still fighting. And then Jon and Stair. Where I love it because when Stair sees Jon first, and starts making his way towards him. And then Jon notices and starts like, oh, yeah, motherfucker, okay, bring it. And he starts walking up on him. And Stair, like, pushes one guy out the way. And I'm like, hey, I'm fighting here. Like, he didn't even care if it was, like, one of his own or not. And then they start fighting. And I have got to fucking tell you, this shit was so good. There's, like, the geeky part of me that just loves shit like this. Major nerd boner. The girl who thinks that Kit Harington is fucking hot, major lady boner. I don't even know what it's called, but there's one point where they're fighting where Stair kind of advances on Jon, and then Jon advances on him, and his form and the way his feet were moving, I was like, this is the best thing fucking ever. Like, how can anybody not like this episode? I don't understand it.
It sounds like you got a 3-finger knob. But that I was reminded of like Arya and they got Syrio. The dancing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the dancing of the sword fight. Like when he was dancing around Stir, I was like, that it very much like his footwork felt like that.
So Ygritte sees them fighting, and then they really get into it where, at one point he gets the best of Jon, he's punching him in the gut, he slams his face on an anvil, and then he tosses him a few feet away to his like other area where it looks like that's where like, the blacksmith, where they, forge their weapons and stuff. And
gotta stop you right there, because when he hit his face on that anvil, I was like, "Oh no, here we go again!" Because I was reminded of Oberyn getting his teeth knocked out. I was like, "Oh man, Jon Snow's gonna die here! Oh no!"
Yeah, somebody, I think it was, I can't remember whose podcast it was because I listened to several. Excuse me, an ambulance is about to go by. But somebody said when they were talking about last week's episode when Oberyn's teeth fell out, they were like, "Oh, he's dying. You can't be on the show with no teeth. Like they don't have dentists." Like. I was like, that's true. Like, there's no fucking way that character could continue with no teeth. Nobody wants to see that. I would rather you kill him than have him be on the show with no teeth.
That's like seeing. That's just like seeing Theon with no dick. You just don't want to see it.
No, I want one shot at the dick nub. Sorry, I do.
I know you do. You have a 2-finger knob.
So wait, so then when he tosses him over, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but there is this, I've talked about it before, not on a podcast, but a long time ago, there's this guy named Gavin de Becker, and he's like he's just like personal security for a lot of famous people, and like that's what his company does, and he wrote this book called A Gift of Fear, and then another one called Protecting the Gift, and it's all about how, fear is a good thing, and like how, I think I have said on a podcast before that in that book, he talks about how humans are the only ones that'll hear a strange noise and explain it away and not go investigate or not get away. Like animals in the wild, they hear it and they like, oh, fuck, time to go. I think that's a lion coming to get my ass, He says, but humans, we will make excuses, or women will make excuses for getting in an elevator alone with a guy that gives them a bad vibe, but they don't want to come off being a bitch. You know what I mean? So he gives you like these real life cases. And one thing he always said was never go to the second location. So like if you're in a parking lot and a guy approaches you and there are other people around and he's trying to get you to get into a car, never go to the second location. Like your percentage for like not making out of the situation rises significantly if you let them take you to the second location. The same thing in fight scenes. When you are kicking somebody's ass, don't toss them to another location. Like, he could have killed Jon, but because he tossed him to a second location where he was able to not only just get his bearings a little bit, but grab another weapon, that's why Styr is dead. Yeah. So there you have it from me to you folks. If you're in a fight and you're winning, don't toss the guy into the second location, because it never ends well. It never ends well for you.
Yeah. Don't throw him near a hammer.
No. Like,
you're going to get it in your head.
Right. Don't throw him into other weapons, like when you took away his first one. So that's what happens.
That's the second guy that Jon Snow has killed in fantastic fashion.
Oh, yeah.
I killed the guy with the sword through the back of the head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then now he's like, I'm going to put a hammer in your head. He's like, I don't like people's heads.
Nope. Cracked his head open. And when he turns around, Ygritte, and I love it because you can hear like the tension of her pulling, the arrow back on the crossbow. And I love it because he actually smiles at her because he's so happy to see her. Even despite everything. And he would have let her kill him. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't making any move to fight or anything. But the fact that he smiled and the fact that you could see that meant something, like that affected her. That smile affected her. And it may have saved his life. You know what I mean? Like, maybe that's what kept her from doing what she had been saying she's been going to do for episodes now. The fact that he wasn't malicious toward her, you know what I mean? Like, the last they saw each other, she put all these arrows in his ass, and he loves her that he smiled. Oh my God, it was so heartbreaking. And then she takes an arrow through the back.
Yeah.
And Jon looks over, and Ollie nods like, "You're welcome, motherfucker." Like,
it reminded me, we covered also the following, and it reminded me of that stairway scene where Shawn Ashmore was there, and the guy killed her before he could talk to her.
Yes, he wanted to.
Yeah, and he looked over at the cop, and the cop was like, "You're welcome."
Yes.
Like, it was the same kind of thing here. It was like, Ollie was like, "Hey, we both owed her one." Right?
Yes. And I love it because Jon was like, in the following, the guy was like, "I needed him for information." But okay. So this is what I was talking about in the spoiler section. So obviously I knew that Ygritte was going to die. And in the books, they're not really clear on who kills her. Like, there's this, confusing, attack on the wall. All this stuff is going on. And if I'm not mistaken, they're wildlings like climbing this wall or gate inside, and he is shooting arrows, and he sees like a flash of red hair, and he hears like a scream, and then later when the battle is all over and they're surveying the damage, I think he finds her body, or does she fall? And it's just like assume. But either way, he's not really clear on if he killed her or not, and that kind of fucks with him a little bit, right after, like, was I the one responsible? So last week when we were doing this, when I was recording the spoiler section, I was saying, the fact that she let Gilly live, I wonder if Gilly's going to make it back to Castle Black first, because where else would she go? I figure she has to come back and be like, yeah, I'm alive, whatever. And then when the attack happens, I wonder if Gilly will kill her. And it's kind of like, that's what you get for letting her live. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. So that's what I thought was going to happen. I said it in the spoiler section. And then one of our new listeners, I'm going to pull it up now so that I don't lose it for later. But one of our new listeners, he actually mentioned it in an email to me and then in a tweet. And I should probably bring up the email instead. Yeah, let me do that. So his name is Jose Bermudez, and I can't read all of his email because the latter part of it is spoilery. I'll read it in the spoiler section, but the first part is, "Hey Nina, listening to your podcast and loving the recaps. I'll be checking out other content from your site as well." Yay, thank you. He goes, "I am Cheeto260. Hopefully that's how you say it. Let me spell it for you guys. Chito 260. Cheeto. On Twitter, and I sent you a private message saying the boy on the wall will end up killing Ygritte. I think it makes sense, like you said. He was talking shit about being a good archer, and she did kill his father. So he had sent me a private message after listening to the spoiler section, and he was like, I I do think it'll be someone other than Jon that kills her, but I think it's going to be the little boy. And he turned out to be dead on. So kudos to you. And I do think it works better this way.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I mean, especially like because the way that they tied it in with Sam becoming a more of a man, and they tied it in with that, and it makes a lot of sense.
And he was the episode after he'd made it back there, to give them the message. And remember when Locke showed up and they were in the courtyard being trained, and he wanted to fight, and they were like, "Yeah, boy, sit down." He was like, "I'm the best archer in my," He wasn't lying. He had some skills, and I totally forgot that he had said that. So when he reminded me of that in the private message on Twitter, I was like, "Yeah, your theory is much better than mine. It's not going to be Gilly. It's going to be that boy." And he was so right. So yeah, kudos to you. So yeah, so she dies in Jon's arms. She brings up the cave, and she was saying how they should have never left it. And he goes, "We'll go back." And then she says, "You know nothing, Jon Snow," and dies in his arms.
It was like Pyp dying in Sam's arms.
Yeah. And it was really, I don't really care for her, and I really didn't care for this relationship. Like, I might have even said it in the spoiler section. I don't give a fuck about her. I don't care when she dies. But I think this is again, testament to the episode and the direction and the acting and just how this was done, that it worked. Like, I felt something, even though I don't like her. And I think Kurt Favish, he's a friend of ours. He has his own podcast. He participates on our Facebook wall. I think I read something from him. I didn't get to read his whole review, but at one point he did say that this made him cry because she was his favorite female character, which I found interesting because I don't hear that often. It's usually Arya or Daenerys. So, yeah.
I feel like I felt bad for Jon Snow, but I didn't feel bad that Ygritte died. Because,
right.
I mean, I felt like, she did put 3 arrows in Jon Snow, and she did participate in killing Ollie's parents. I mean, she did do all those bad things. Yeah. I mean, it's not like I felt like we were supposed to feel something there, and the only thing I felt was for Jon.
That's what I mean. I agree. I think it was more for Jon. It's kind of like I said last week when you read the books, when Oberyn died in the books, it was sad, but it was sad for what it meant for Tyrion. And the show, it honestly, the outcome for Tyrion, that was like the last thing on my mind. It was just like, oh my God, this great character just died. This totally sucks. So yeah, this was, for me, I agree. It was really about how it affected Jon. A lot of people had a problem with this kind of slow-mo, like pulling back shot of him cradling her and the fighting kind of going on behind them in slow motion. I did not have a problem with that. They were like, oh, so the battle just stops? No, it doesn't stop. I think they slow it down.
Clearly, yeah, I mean, clearly the battle did not stop. I mean, you can see it going on in the background. It's still happening, and they just happen to have this one moment where she dies in his arms.
Right, and he said, I read in the same interview, Neil Marshall was saying, someone said this is the first slow-mo shot they've done, and then someone else was like, this is what the interviewer is telling him. And he goes, oh, no, but then someone else said, no, they did it in Blackwater, which is the only other episode he's directed. And he was like, I do think we did the slow-mo when Loras, Tyrell, and Tywin, you don't know it's them at the time. When they ride up to save the day with Tyrion, after he got slashed in the face. And because Loras is wearing Renly's stuff, because he was in love with him, you're meant to think that maybe it's Renly. Like, what, who are these people? What's going on? He says we did it then. But also, he didn't mention this, but I seem to think I think they did another little slow-mo thing in that same episode. Wasn't there like a moment where the Hound sees that guy on fire running towards him? Didn't that slow down a little bit? Because he was like, he panicked.
It seems like there may have been, but I've only seen it once.
I was just going to say, I'm asking the guy who's seen the episode once. I've seen it like 10 times. I'm almost positive that's how it happened before Bronn saved him. But anyway, he was like, he goes.
That made sense because if the guy was on fire, I mean, it made sense for it to be in slow motion.
Yeah, because that was the whole point too, that it froze him. Like someone like the giant, the Hound was frozen by something like this, like that fear of the fire. But anyway, I just thought it was really interesting that Neil Marshall said that. That is not something typically the show does. It's not a style choice that they like to do or make, but in those 2 cases, he felt it was necessary, so they did it. But it's not something that they will, typically do on the show going forward. So
slow motion it's a lot like shaky cam. I mean, it's like it can have an effect when you use it sparingly, and so I feel like he knows when to use things and make them effective.
So then north of the wall at the top, Ed instructs the guys to release the scythe. And this giant fucking hooked anchor of death just swings across and takes out, if you look at my recap on the website for this episode, I found a 3-panel gif of this. Swings across, wipes these wildlings out to the point where when it's, I mean, just leaves like this big red, white, snowy, icy, bloody mist.
It's a smear on the wall.
Yes, and then it's just like one guy's hand still attached to the hook, grappling hook.
He turned them into a skid mark, is basically what it did.
Oh my god, that was so great. That was so great. And then he tells them, "Hoist her up, boys. They've had enough for tonight." I love it.
When they were climbing the wall, I was thinking to myself, shouldn't they have some way to like knock them off? Wouldn't it make sense to have like a windshield wiper? And then that's when they pull out this thing, and then like the entire top of the wall, because they haven't used it in forever. Mm-hmm. So like when they bust it out, they have to break off like the top of the wall that's ice, and shoot it out. It was so cool the way they did it. Yeah. And I was like, what are they doing? They're like destroying half the wall, and then that's when it swung down. I was like, holy shit, they're doing it. Yeah. And they hit them perfectly. It's like they aimed that thing right at those guys where they were. It was so cool.
Yeah, it was like basically Jon told them, let it, release it if you need be. In other words, if they get to the point where it can be effective, then do it. Like, because that's the other thing. Climbing the wall means no guarantee that you'll make it, even if they don't do anything to you. It's just a dangerous thing to do, So, oh yeah, he tells them don't cheer too loudly. They still outnumber us 1,000 to 1. Tormund's in the courtyard, filled with arrows, still trying to fight. Jon tells him to, it's over, let it end. Tormund says, this is how a man ends, and tries to... I love him. Still tries to go out fighting, but he takes an arrow to the knee.
And Jon Snow does totally like Neo in The Matrix, where he comes toward him and he just like hits him in the knee, like, you're done. I'm more powerful than you.
Yeah. And he says, put him in chains. We'll question him later. And as Tormund's being dragged off, he says, I should have thrown you from the top of the wall. And as Jon walks away, he goes, you should have. Sam and Gilly are reunited, and Sam sees Janice sitting in the corner like a little bitch. And then...
And when Sam came in that room, I was like, here's where he's going to see her, and then, like, she's dead or something. And then when he saw her alive, I was like, oh, she killed him. But then it was like, I think it was even better to see him cowering in the corner. Yeah. Because, I mean, that's even better than anything that could have been, like, death. It was better to just see him as a coward.
So Jon says, so they're surveying the damage, and Jon tells Sam that this was just a test. Mance was testing their defenses, that they're going to, they'll strike again later that night, and he goes, we may be able to fight them off, tonight, maybe tomorrow night, but not for much longer than that. And he tells him he's going to go north of the wall to find Mance. If they lose their leader, they lose their purpose. If he can kill Mance, then all the, tribes that Mance was able to put together will go back to fighting each other, hopefully, is what he thinks. He knows it's a bad plan. Sam doesn't want him to go, but he says, yeah, it's a bad plan. What's yours?
I love that.
I love when that's used, because 9 times out of 10 when that's used in fiction, nobody has an answer. Because it's true. Like, when a person, particularly when it's a character who is traditionally smart, when they are driven to the point where they're doing something that others might see as reckless or a suicide mission because they really feel like this is the best option we have right now, and it sucks. Like, he doesn't want to go die. But then it's like, okay, what else you got? You give me something else that works, and I'll do it. But this is all we got. And whenever the person says that, like, okay, well, what do you think I should do instead? There's never an answer. And I love it, because it's like, when used right, I should say, because usually the character is at that point where you're just like, what else, what is he going to do? He's like, I'm going to die either way. We're not going to make it out of here without, unless they go away, and they're not going away.
It's like, if I go out there, I die. But if I stay here, we all die. Yes. So what else should I do?
Yeah. So they go through, to make their way to the tunnel where they find Grenn's body with the other guys and the dead giant, which... And I really was hoping it would have been really super, super lame and weak. But I was hoping it was one of those things where you think he's dead and then he coughs and then he's like... But I wanted it because it was him. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it was anything else, I'd have been like, oh, that's so hokey. But I really was kind of hoping it because I like Grenn.
It would have been a cop out, but it would have been okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like, I noticed, though, that the giant did kill all of them, so I was like, if there had been anyone coming behind the giant, they would have gotten through. So they
because he dropped the gate down again.
Well, that's what I mean. If there had been somebody coming behind him,
that was the other thing. They were like, "Why didn't?" I think it was on Bald Move's Instate. They were like, "Well, why didn't others try to run?" Like I said, I thought that we were going to see guys trying to like run through the giant's legs and all that stuff. But the first wave that they had sent out there had been decimated when they blew up that stuff, and they all went running, and then the mammoth trampled the rest. So there was nobody there with him. Is the point. So, and then once he got in, he just let it drop. Like he was like Jon Snow. He was like, or like Oberyn, you killed my friend, prepare to die. So, and he tells Sam to burn the bodies, which, oh, Jesus. And then, he goes out, and that's how the episode ends. He goes beyond the wall. Sam tells him to come back.
If they didn't burn, wouldn't there be a possibility of them coming back? Like,
that's why he said it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it made sense that he wants to burn it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because remember, it was Dolores Ed who said last week, whoever's the last one, standing. If we all die, if you're the last one, burn me. Because once I'm done with this world, I don't want to come back. Yeah. So that's the end of the episode. I will say the other thing I wanted to point out is that I said earlier, Pyp did not die in the books. He's still alive at this point, and so is Grenn. So there was a lot of us book readers like, what the fuck, y'all? Like, this sucks. So again, I think that
I think I interrupted you when you were talking about the very last scene, but when Jon leaves, and then Sam's like, "Hey, Jon, come back." I was like, it was touching. I was like, he really wants him to come back. It was kind of like, I mean, it was like, I don't know, like a bromance. Yeah. It was like, come back. He had tears in his eyes. He was like, please, I need you.
And this is where I'm thinking Jon was like, if I can, trust me, I will. Like, you really didn't need to tell me that. I want to come back. Trust me. Okay, so
there's a possibility, though, that in that moment, Jon Snow may have given up on life because he lost Ygritte. So I think it was nice for Sam to remind him he still has something to come back to.
See, that's I don't believe that, though. I think that was the whole point, that he'd already lost her, and he knew that. Do you know what I mean? Like, his duty is to that wall. And I love that because he volunteered to go. Like, Catelyn was treating him like shit. The very first episode when Benjen arrives to meet Robert, he tells him, when you go back, please take me with you. I want to do this, and he had this kind of pie in the sky idea of what it meant to be in the Night's Watch. Like, he thought it was all noble, and it was on the trek there when he was looking at the other guys that were going, and Tyrion was like, yeah, you're going to be up there with a bunch of rapists. This isn't what you think it is. So I think, like, his whole journey has been his commitment to this wall, even when he found out that his father was beheaded. Then again, when he found out that his brother was killed at the Red Wedding, like, he's had reason to leave. Even when Maester Aemon told him, you don't think I know what this feels like? When they killed my brother, the Mad King, like, you think I didn't want to go? But no, your duty is here. So I don't think that he thought, or anyone would think, that Jon would go out there with, like, not really caring to give up for Ygritte, but that this is the best chance that the wall has. You know what I mean? So,
I feel like maybe from Sam's perspective, that's what he was feeling.
Yeah, okay, so let's take a quick break, and then we'll be right back to read some of our feedback. Hey guys, did you know that you can support our website and our podcast just by shopping at Amazon? Go to projectfandom.com/Amazon and we will receive a small portion of your total order. It doesn't cost you anything extra. We get that little bit from Amazon's profits. Pretty cool, huh? Super easy, and it's a great way to support us, help us keep the podcast going, and help us do all the fun, crazy contests that we come up with. So if you like the podcast, you like the website, consider using our affiliate link for your shopping needs. Again, that's projectfandom.com/Amazon. Now back to the show. Okay, We're back. So on our Facebook wall, Katoria says, we don't have confirmation that Commander Jerkface is dead. I think she means Alliser Thorne.
Yeah.
We saw him get cut and dragged under part of Castle Black. The wound looked mortal, but we don't know 100%. I actually disagree that it looks mortal. I didn't think it looked that bad. It wasn't like, and I think also too, the bald move guys, Jim was like, I don't know, like his guts, and Aaron was like, I didn't see any guts. Like, I think that I'm surprised that anybody thinks that it looks as bad as all that. I don't think it looked mortal, but
I think we've seen like Jon Snow had 3 arrows, and we had the other guy who had all those arrows in his back and he was still fighting.
Yeah.
Like, these guys are tougher than you think they would be.
And then you got to think too that, it's not like they wear heavy armor, but it is, protective gear. It's not like they're out there fighting just like in regular shirts and stuff. So maybe that kind of dulled some of the, how much he was actually cut or whatever. That probably wasn't as bad as all that. I don't think it's that bad. Devin says
it should be mortal, but like not. He didn't die like right then.
Yeah.
I think it should just be like he's going to die over time.
Yeah.
Because it was such a bad wound, and like we said about the teeth, like they don't have dentistry, like the medical care isn't so great. So he may die eventually from that wound, but I don't think it's something that killed him right then.
Okay, Devin says, giant shooting big-ass arrows, the scythe on the wall. 2 of the greatest things I've seen on television. I was wondering if anyone else wondered if Aemon was talking about Lady Olenna, because we know her sex game is so on point. Maybe that is just reason to drive a man to the wall and forsake all other women. Well, I don't think so, because she was supposed to marry a Targaryen, but I thought she said the Targaryens, maybe she didn't, no, because her husband's name is Luther. But she was supposed to marry a Targaryen and she didn't want to. She said she took one look at him with that pale hair and stuff and those gray eyes or whatever, and she wanted no parts of it. So I don't know.
It would be interesting if that was the case.
It really would. So where are we? Oh, as much as Jon and Tormund were complete badasses, I give the most credit to Sam for finally doing something. And lastly, I have to end by saying Ginger Minge. Fuck you, Devin. You didn't have to do that to me. I didn't.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Oh my God, that's so disgusting. And listen, I'm a woman who doesn't even have a problem saying cunt or twat. But minge? I draw the line, dude. I draw the line. That's so hard.
What about the snatch? What about that?
Snatch is fine. But minge? Ugh. Okay. Sarah says, while it was jarring to spend the whole episode at the wall, it was worth every minute. Some chilling moments. One, the owl landing. Yeah, the first time I watched it, so when they cut to that thing that was warged out, I forgot that that's what it looks like when the humans warg, like because we've seen it happen to Bran. I thought it was just like a dead person. Like they had just had a head sitting there. And I was like, why are they? And I said to my husband, I was like, what's up with that? I think it was the second time that I watched it. Or maybe, no, the next scene where the horn started blowing and all that stuff. And then he wakes up and the owl flies away. That I was like, oh, he was warging into the owl. That's how they knew when the fire was lit. Okay. But yeah, the owl landing, she says the relentless bow twangs, usually that's left out of special effects, but it was very effective, true. Pitt's dying eyes, the scythe, Grenn leading his men in the watch pledge, that never stops being awesome. Ghost, why is he ever kennelled? Because Alice is an asshole, Sarah, that's why.
Yep.
Finding Grenn in a pile with the giant, having fulfilled his duty against the odds, really well done. Could have been longer. I agree. We were actually shorted when he was walking through the gate, and then they cut to to the credits. It was like, well, I watch it on the East Coast feed, so the first time I watch it, I don't watch it in high def. That's how committed I am, people. So at my time, it's 6:52. When it ended, I looked over at 6:52, and usually it ends around 6:55, maybe 6:57. So I was like, oh, you fuckers, you gypped us. However, someone told me that next week is going to be 66 minutes. So, yeah.
That's where you get it. That's where you get the make up for it.
Yes, and I have to say, this is not a spoiler. I've been saying it in the spoiler section. If the final shot of this season is what I think it's going to be, it's what I thought they were going to do last season, and this is why I don't write TV shows for a living. I think it's much better to hold off to do it this season. But if it is what I think it's going to be, you non-book readers, you're just going to be like throwing your panties at the screen. You're going to throw your money at the screen. You're going to make it rain on your TV because Game of Thrones is about to give you your life next week.
I will be sure to have my panties on.
Yes.
And then take them off at the end.
Yes. Clean or dirty, we don't care. They're going to want your panties and your money.
Oh, they're gonna be clean. Come on, I have a ginger mange over here.
I hate you. So, Chance says, my buddy pointed out that it's bullshit that Jon says 6 inches from my heart in a British accent. Okay, tell your friend I said stop nitpicking. I guess the metric system, the whole they don't say inches and all that, whatever. And then Mrs. Weeks just gave me.
I mean, you have to. It's like it's a fictional world, so
right. There are dragons. Please pick your battles, people.
They're in this world. Everyone has adopted the standard system.
Yes. So, and then Mrs. Weeks said that the recap, meaning my recap, was everything. Thank you very much. This was a really, really hard one to recap, as you can imagine, because there was just so much going on. And I thought about just doing a simple, like, okay, these are the top 5 moments or whatever. But I didn't. I wrote it all out because I'm a professional. No,
it's a very visual episode. I didn't have very many notes. I mean, because it's such a visual episode. Like you just have to talk about it.
Okay, so then let's see our feedback in our group, which by the way is called Podcast Fandom Crew. Search for it on Facebook, and we'll let you in. The only rules are don't be an asshole and don't post spoilers without a proper spoiler warning. So we posted our recap in there earlier in the day and asked our listeners and followers and friends and fans to leave some feedback. And Kelly says, I saw a lot of comments that people thought this episode was boring. I liked it, but I get what they mean. They didn't do much to make us really care what happens at the wall this season, even though it's important. They had too much to do elsewhere. So then when we spend a whole episode at the wall, when people want to know what's going to happen to Tyrion, whether the Mountain actually dies from his injuries, how Dorne responds to the Viper's death, the episode was necessary, but it broke the flow. Good recap. I watched it late, but tweeted with the hashtag PFGOT, so hopefully you guys saw those. Yeah, Kelly, I did see those. Thank you. I noticed that I think Devin, there's a couple of people I notice every week that you guys kind of watch it the hour after everyone else. So I don't know what that's about, if that's a time zone thing. Like I said, I thankfully get to watch it the same time the East Coast people because of the HBO East feed. But yeah, I did see those. And like I said, yeah, I don't know if I necessarily agree with it, but I can see it. I can see where, again, if the wall isn't your thing. And again, I was surprised by how many people who didn't even understand why this attack was happening, like what Mance's issue was, why the wildlings were wanting to do this. If you feel like there's so much going on, to the point where I can't, I'm like, I can't believe, like I said to you last week, John, you didn't know Jorah was spying on Dany, but I get it. Like there's so much information, and some things stick with, resonates or the show does a better job of explaining or, driving home certain points better than others. So I get that. And what all the things she said was the main stuff that I was seeing. People felt that it was filler. They didn't expect to spend the whole hour at the wall. I knew that from way before the season started, because we reported it for the website when Neil Marshall was tapped to film the 9th episode, and they said it was a big battle. Having read the books, I knew it was going to be the Battle at Castle Black. I figured it would be the full hour, so I wasn't surprised. But a lot of people watch on HBO Go, so they don't see the next scene on, you know what I mean, or the previously on, and so they just did not know. They wanted to see a resolution to the shit that happened last week. And so if you didn't know to go into the whole hour and not get it, I get it. Even if you can appreciate it, it's a letdown if that's not what you wanted. Okay, so then Callie says, I was so surprised when I saw that some people were disappointed. I love this episode. It had so much going on, and I feel like jumping around the world would have taken away from the events at the wall. It had everything I was hoping for, and the giants were badass. I love watching that giant ride in on a freaking mammoth. The fight was intense and kept me right on the edge of my seat. I do not see how this episode can be classified as boring when it contained Jon Snow, a direwolf, giants riding mammoth style, battle scenes, and death. I happen to agree with you, Callie. Yeah. Mrs. Week says, It took a lot for me to tune into this episode. Turns out I'm not quite over the passing of Oberyn Martell. Every time someone mentions his name, I get a little misty-eyed. Also, the prospect of the episode being just Castle Black made me wonder if it would be any good. Add to that my fear that Jon Snow might die, and you can maybe understand my ambivalence. Well, this may have been one of my favorite episodes. I have to say, seeing all the different sides of these characters was pretty cool. I can 100% get behind Sam's reasoning when it comes to getting some. Those rules ain't finite. Wait. The entire thing she means definite, but that's hilarious. Get yours, Sam. I'm glad he finally manned up. Been waiting for that for 3 seasons. So Alliser Thorne is still a douchebag, but he does his duty and kicks much ass. Slint is such a gash. Ugh. Gash! Jesus Christ! Gash. Twat. Cunt. Minge.
I think that Ginger Gash is better because it's illiterate. It's alliterative.
Yeah, I do appreciate nice alliteration. You guys are crazy. I refuse to add the sir. That whiny punk ran to hide while a child killed wildlings. True. That's true. Ollie manned up while Janice Slint was hiding with a woman and a baby. She goes, I'm pretty sore about the deaths of Pyp and Grenn, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. That damn egret. She was like Bruce Leroy in that courtyard. I wondered if she would have had it in her to kill Jon. I did have a major problem with all that killing going on and Jon taking the time to cradle her dying body. Excuse me while I hurl. You know what's more romantic than holding your dying girlfriend? Not getting hacked to death and eaten by her friends. That was a little unbelievable. Was it just me or did this episode seem short? It was short. They gypped us of a few minutes. Like it all happened too fast and was just over too soon. All in all, I think this was a great distraction from the fact that Tyrion has been sentenced to die and I see no way of saving him. Germ is a jackass. Can't wait for next week. Tamala says, the Wall storyline is slightly more interesting than Dany and her dragons. I agree. I actually like what's going on at the Wall way more than I like what's going on in Marine. Yeah. She continues, I was so bored with the episode, but at the same time, I held my breath because I was waiting for Jon to die. FYI, I don't want him to die. But I figure everyone I like is dying, so he's next. Yes, I'm still butthurt about Oberyn. I have a feeling that we're going to be well into season 5 before we can really even think about him without wanting to burst into tears. But she continues.
I can right now.
Yeah, Jon is a little more okay with this than others. Tamala says the only good kill this year was Joffrey. I will say this: Kit's fighting scenes were poetry in motion. His Pompeii training truly came in handy.
That's the only good thing that came out of that movie.
That's what I mean. When I was watching it, I was like, he looks like he knows what the fuck he's doing. It looked really good. She goes, I was glad the kid shot the chick in the back. Good riddance. And then, here we go. Shalita says, hope it's not too late for feedback. It was a good, solid episode with great fight scenes, but not just on par with the devastation of life and life-altering events of previous episode 9s. Okay, this is not the Red Wedding or Ned losing his head. It was anticlimactic after last week. I'm sad Jon's friends were killed, liked them since season 1, but I wasn't emotionally attached to them. I could care either way about Ygritte. I think the kid who got her was the same one whose daddy she killed right in front of him. If so, go on, little dude. Yep, that's exactly who it was. She goes, get that chick. She may still love Jon and whatnot, but she killed up a whole bunch of innocent people.
Yep. Killed up. I like that.
Killed up. Alliser is still an asshole, but at least he can fight. Slint, on the other hand, is a pussy. When does he die? I love it. It's like people no spoilers, but now she's like, I wouldn't mind if you just let me know how many more episodes I got to put up with this motherfucker. Sam manned up and finally kissed that girl. Sheesh. And check him out finding loopholes and whatnot. Great fight sequences, but not really worthy of episode 9. Let's see what happens in the finale. And what the fuck is Jon's plan? Go sacrifice myself? I don't get it. Again, in at work, so hope it's not too late. Can't wait to hear the podcast. Thanks. Yeah, and then I put, when I was reading some of this, because they went back and filled it in, at first I think they just gave I think they were worried that we were going to record before they could give their feedback. So they gave really short feedback. And I said to them, I can't wait to read y'all's asses on this podcast, because I couldn't believe they were all like, oh, it was kind of boring. Oh, I didn't care. And then So Shalita says, we aren't saying it was bad, Nina. Just we're still feeling some kind of way after Oberyn. And basically the only ones we have any attachment to would be Jon and Sam. If they could have given us some kind of idea of the happenings at King's Landing, I would probably feel a little differently. So again, Shalita's one of those that she just wants to know. Are they going to cut Tyrion's head off or not? Well, you'll find out next week. I can tell you that much. So, okay. That's it. I want to remind everybody that we hang out on Twitter while the episode is on and live tweet it. We use the hashtag PFGOT. That helps us keep track of, all the people hanging out with us, particularly talking about the episode. It's a lot of fun. Most weeks I award Tweet of the Week. And what that means is at the end of the season, we put all the people's names who won Tweet of the Week into a drawing for a free t-shirt, a Game of Thrones t-shirt from our Zazzle store. We did the same thing when we covered The Walking Dead. We live tweeted every Sunday night. We kept track of our favorite tweets and we randomly pulled a name, and Shalita won a really cool t-shirt that Jon actually designed that was basically inspired by the finale of The Walking Dead that season. It's a pretty cool t-shirt. I've been meaning to actually order one for myself. I've been lazy about it. But Shalita got it. She loves it. She's going to wear it to the next geek convention she attends. So that's kind of cool. So yeah, that's just one of the benefits of hanging out with us on Twitter as we live tweet Game of Thrones. So if you want to do that again, use the hashtag PFGOT. And last night there were a lot of good tweets. And I have to say that I gave the tweet of the week to Lady Lovely Locks, who I believe is Mrs. Weeks. She said, "Command of the Wall is getting passed around like a joint."
Pass the duchy around the left-hand side.
I have to tell you that when something is being passed around like a joint, that is one of my favorite sayings. It's right up there with the thirst is real. So, newsflash, hint, if you ever want to win Tweet of the Week, if you happen to hit on one of my favorite little sayings, you're guaranteed to get it. But yeah, no, she said that and it cracked me up. But there's some funny ones. Devin said, "I almost don't hate you, Sir Alliser." I can relate to that feeling. Heather says, "This giant is like, let me show you fuckers how to shoot an arrow." And finally, Mrs. Weeks also said, "Jon Snow is a lot like Daryl Dixon. He makes dirty look good." So, yeah, there was a lot of fun. I want to give a shout out to all of our new listeners that we picked up from my appearance on last week, the Black Guy Who Tips podcast. If you haven't listened to that, go check it out. I was asked to participate as they talked about the episode, The Mountain and the Viper. I didn't talk a lot because it's like weird when you're on somebody else's show, You don't want to step in and say too much and do too much talking. And so, yeah, I didn't talk a lot, but had a lot of fun and they were really cool and, allow me to promote what we do and sharing our stuff on their Twitter and Facebook and stuff. So I picked up personally a lot of new followers on Twitter. We got quite a few new downloads, subscribers, feedback. So yeah, we appreciate all of it. Thank you guys so much. So that's it. There's one other thing I want to do tonight. And so sucks that Megan isn't here. And I didn't properly prepare. I am sorry. So forgive me. This is going to be rushed. But I want to do a death pool, John, for next week's finale. So we're going to go through and say whether or not we think a character is going to live or die next week. Well, see, it's going to be really you and Megan because I've read the book. So,
well, but still, you didn't know Pyp and Grenn were going to die. So.
This is true. I will participate for funsies, and I may bullshit just to keep throw you guys off. But I want to get your answers because this is the only opportunity we're going to have to do it. And then next week when we record the podcast for the finale, I want to do a death prediction for season 5, just the major characters. Okay. So let's start with Jon. Do you think he's going to die, next week?
I hope not.
Come on. Yes or no? Commit.
No, I'm going to say no.
Okay.
Because I don't hope not.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense for him to die.
What about Dany?
Yeah. No, I don't think she dies. She hasn't done enough yet for her death to mean anything.
Cersei.
No.
Jaime.
No.
Tyrion.
No, nobody's gonna die.
Well, you know you're wrong, right? You know some of this got to be wrong because it's Game of Thrones after all. Tywin.
Sure. I'll say he dies.
Okay.
Sure.
I'm just going through the families. Tommen.
No.
Okay. Give me a second. Like I said, Brienne.
No.
Pod.
Well, oh man, she may die because of. I'm going back to Brienne because she just got Star Wars, so she may be.
So you're gonna say yes?
Yeah, I mean, sure, I'll say yes about that.
Pod.
Just because of Star Wars. No, I'll say no about him.
Sansa.
No.
Littlefinger.
No, that's another one I hope doesn't die. I mean, he may, but I'm going to say no because I hope not.
Robin.
Yes, sure.
Arya.
No.
The Hound.
I don't want him to, but he may. I mean, I don't know if he's going to die next episode, though. I'll say yes.
Okay. Give me a second. So, John. Sam.
No.
Okay, give me a second. Dario?
No, I don't. Like, it's another one. I don't think his story is done.
Mm-hmm. Jorah?
I'm gonna say yeah, because I think something could happen with him because of what we saw last week.
Okay. Stannis?
No.
Davos?
I hope not, but yes, I'll say yes. That's a tough one.
Melisandre, the Red Woman?
Yeah, sure, I'll say that.
Oh wait, Mance.
Oh. Well, if Jon doesn't die, I gotta think this through. Sure, I'll say yes. Well, maybe Jon kills. I don't know.
Tormund?
No.
Okay. All right. Can you think of anybody that I missed? I'm trying to think of all the.
Well, the mountain because.
Okay, that's if I didn't confirm or deny whether or not he was dead. So if he's not dead, do you think he'll die next week?
I want him to because that's what I feel like. That's one reason. That's one reason why I feel like I told you. I think on Facebook that I feel like I'm okay with Oberyn dying because I felt like if the mountain's dead, because that's what Oberyn's whole deal was. So if the mountain's not dead, I need someone who knows Oberyn's story to kill him, to kill the mountain, because then that will because if the mountain doesn't die, then I will be upset that Oberyn died because it won't have made sense within the story to me.
Okay. So yes or no? Yes, you said yes, right?
Yes.
Okay. Varys.
No, I don't think he should die yet.
Shay, or do you think we'll even see her again?
I wasn't. I mean, thinking.
I'm just trying to go through everybody.
I'll say no because I don't think we'll see her. At least not in this episode. Yeah. Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, Bronn.
No.
Okay. Can you think of anybody that I missed? I'm going through King's Landing. I did still the Lannisters.
Did you say Jamie? And if you did, okay. So I said no. Yeah.
I've decided not to give my answers because I know things.
Yeah, because then you'll be like, yeah, this person dies. Oh wait, no. So I
don't think it'd be fair for me to say one way or the other. Okay, I think that's everybody. I think that is everybody worth mentioning. Here's a bonus question: where the fuck is Gendry?
I don't know. He's still out having fun, I guess.
He's still rowing in that damn boat. Or maybe he drank the water. I don't know. Okay, so thank you for doing that. We'll do this again. Hopefully some of these people will die next week, so the list will be shorter going into season 5.
because we know that there are going to be new characters next season. So I mean, some of these people have to, if they
Yeah.
don't die, they have to go on vacation or something.
Yeah,
Because
because the budget,
yeah.
the budget.
And just because of just the density of the story. I
Mhm.
mean, you
Mhm.
can't really have all of them in it
Yeah.
and have more new people. I
Yeah.
mean, it's difficult.
So that's it. I want to thank everybody for listening. I'm just going to wrap us up and remind you about some stuff that's going on with our website and our podcast and our other podcasts. And then you're going to hear the outro music, and then it'll just be me reading the 2 spoiler emails that we got and some speculation. And I'm going to poke fun at all of John's death predictions for next week. But can you believe he thinks that person's going to live? No, I'm just kidding. Again, this podcast is Podcast Fandom. Currently, we're just covering Game of Thrones. The other shows that we used to cover have already done their season finales until the fall. So right now, you just get Game of Thrones for us. And actually, next week, the finale, our last Game of Thrones podcast. We will, however, get together to do a wrap-up cast. And I think that is the cast where I'm going to ask Megan and John to give me their predictions for season 5. We're going to discuss some of the events of this season. Arguably, I think so far this has been the best season to date. So there's going to be a lot of good stuff to talk about. I want to talk about that rape scene. I want to talk about the pacing of this season, the major things that have happened, what we can expect or hope for season 5. So we'll have 2 more Game of Thrones podcasts going forward. But then after that, our podcast is covering the last season of True Blood. And a friend of ours has asked to guest. I don't know if he's going to do it every week. I'm not allowed to give his name, except he just wants to be referred to as the voice of reason. This is someone who basically, this is how he feels about True Blood. I hate this fucking show. It's a hot ass mess. I can't wait for next week. So while most of the podcast will be us girls, I'm probably just going to spend the whole podcast gushing over Eric. The voice of reason will point out why the show is so fucking awful and why we can't quit it. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
I get the feeling that True Blood is one of those shows that has a lot of viewers that are like that.
Yeah, it's just like we know it's ridiculous, but you just can't. It's just fun. It's a fun, campy mess, and I love it. And it's the last season, so yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, I think, for that alone, covering it on the podcast. We're going to be covering The Leftovers, another HBO show brought to you by Damon Lindelof, who's behind Lost. When I was on the Black Guy Who Tips podcast, Rod pointed out that he is not going to watch that show because fuck Lindelof for what he did to Lost. I'm more optimistic about the show than Rod is. I will say I got a little nervous when Damon Lindelof said, I hope people don't focus too much on why the people disappeared and really focus on the story of those left behind. And I'm like, you fucker, we're all tuning in hoping to figure out why this happened. But if you don't know, it's a show about, one day at the same time, suddenly 2% of the world's population just disappeared.
I wonder how many polar bears there will be.
I hope not any. But we will be covering that. And then we're going to be covering The Strain on FX. And I'm super excited about that. I've gotten more pumped the more I've seen previews. Although I am at a point where I've stopped really looking at any too much information behind The Leftovers and The Strain because I just don't want to be, tainted or turned off by. I want to keep this enthusiasm that I have. If we're going to be covering a show every week, you don't want to get sick of it before it even starts. So, but those are the 3 shows we're going to be covering over the summer. So we hope you'll join us for that. If you do enjoy Podcast Fandom, please go to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. Tell us which show you've been listening to. It's probably Game of Thrones at this point. Tell us what you like about it. We'll read it on the air. We haven't had reviews in 2 months or so, ever since The Walking Dead ended, and we could desperately use some. It really helps us find new listeners. And this podcast is also available on Stitcher. So if you could take a moment to leave us a review there, that would be awesome. We have another podcast called Project Fandom's Throwback Thursday. On that show, we cover great TV, no longer on the air. And we kicked off this experiment of a podcast with Veronica Mars and Heroes. So every Thursday, we put out 2 episodes, one for each of those shows. We're currently approaching the home stretch of the first season of both of those shows, and we're having a really good time doing it. So if you were a fan of Heroes, and if you're one of those people going back to watch it because Heroes Reborn kicks off next year, we're super excited about that. Check us out. If you are a Marshmallow who love Veronica Mars, again, subscribe. That's also available on iTunes and Stitcher. Finally, our third podcast kicks off at the end of this month. It's called Project Fandom's Book Club, and we're going to be discussing Coldbrook by Tim Lemon. It's kind of like The Stand meets The Walking Dead. One of our listeners, followers, Callie, bought the book and's already finished it, and she liked it. You overachiever. I'm about halfway through. John has not started, I don't think.
No, I've been way busy.
Okay. So, so we're probably going to do in the next week or so is put out a preview cast for that where we talk about our expectations of the book, and just, maybe kick around some titles and some things that some books that we'd want to cover going forward. But every month we'll announce a book. You'll have a month to read it. You can join our Project Fandom's Book Club group on Facebook. And at the end of the month, we record a podcast talking about the book and sharing your feedback on it. So, look for that preview cast to come up in the next week or so. This way, so you can, subscribe to it and get it on your feeds and all that. So when the first episode is available, it just, downloads automatically. But other than that, some ways you can find us on the internet. We're on Twitter at Project Fandom and at ProFanMan. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/Project Fandom. Give us a like. It's a great way to keep up with the content that we put out every day. And our website is projectfandom.com. We do next day recaps of some great TV shows. We cover movies, books, comics, gaming, both tabletop and video games, anime, and more. So check us out. And you can email us anything you want to talk about at projectfandom@gmail.com. Unless it's Game of Thrones book spoilers. Send that to Nina at projectfandom.com. And we're always looking for...
Don't be sending that to me.
Yeah, John doesn't he wants to remain unsullied, but he likes to keep his penis, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I would prefer that. Yeah.
He doesn't want to have a minge. Jesus Christ. You can always tell as it's winding down, I just get silly because I just ramble. But finally, another thing I want to mention is that we are looking for new writers. We've put this out on Facebook and on Tumblr and on Twitter. And it just occurred to me, we never say it on our on our podcast, and we have a really big following so far on this podcast. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't pay anything. It's volunteer only. But however, you should point out that my contributors get press passes to some great events and Comic Cons, and they get free products to review. So if you are a fan of all things geek and you like to write about it and you got some writing chops and you want to contribute to the website, we'd love to have you. Just send an email to projectfandom@gmail.com. Julius, I got your email. I'm going to get back to you. I promise. I've just been really busy. So yeah, that's it. I really think that's it. You're going to hear the music, and afterwards it's just going to be me rambling about spoilers. So until next week, we'll see you when we'll be back to discuss Game of Thrones Season 4, Episode 10, The Children. Won't somebody help the children? I don't know what children this is, but we'll see. Okay, see you next week. Hey guys, welcome to the spoiler section. So get this, you know how I usually record this in the morning? So John and Megan and I record on Monday nights, and then I try to edit before I go to sleep, but some nights it doesn't happen because I always got a lot to do. Most nights I have a lot to do. So anyway, I record the spoiler section early in the morning because the other reason is because my husband is unsullied and he wants to remain so. So I don't want to record in the evening of Monday when he's usually sitting in the bedroom, which is where I do all my work on my computer. But anyway, but I am so tired and I just really want to save this and get it uploaded tonight. So I'm actually recording on Monday night. And I'm in my bathroom because my husband's already asleep and I don't want to record this and wake him up. And my kids are asleep upstairs, and so I don't want to wake them up. So I'm in the master bathroom recording the spoiler section. I'm sure you all wanted to know that. Okay, so let's talk spoilers. I got 2 emails to read. Let me find them. I'm going to read Jose's first. I started reading some of it in the main part of the proper podcast, but so hey Nina, I'm listening to your podcast, loving the recaps. I'll be checking out other content from your site as well. He's Cheeto260 on Twitter. He's the one who sent me the private message about Ollie killing Egret, and he was totally right. So anyway, he goes on to say, anyway, I heard a previous episode. You don't think Brienne will meet Lady Stoneheart this season, and I have to disagree. I have to think about this as a viewer only because her intro in the books was awesome. Then we didn't get anything except mentions about what she was doing from their POVs. If we get some random fray getting off in the season finale, not only will it not mean as much as having Brienne find her and be overcome with grief at the sight of her, but how many will actually remember any fray from last season? Okay, so let me just stop you there. So the reason I don't think they're going to do that is because I just think that this is not a place where they're going to skip ahead. You know what I mean? Because she still doesn't know. Well, I don't know. I don't know what Lady Stoneheart knows, but I don't know. I just don't see them skipping that. I think the first time we see her should be when she's delivering her justice to one of the Freys. How would we know? So last season, when the last season finale, remember the scene where Arya and the Hound ride by these guys eating, and they're talking about sitting around a fire, and they're talking about how rough it was to sew Rob's head onto the Direwolf's body and all this stuff. And they wear these stupid fucking hats. The Freys just do, and they had it on in the Red Wedding. I think particularly if you can picture in your mind the guy who stabbed Rob's wife in the stomach. For some reason, it reminds me of like those chulo hats where it has like the ear flaps. So that's my thinking. Like, I think if they do it in a way where, let's say, it's two of them going to get ransom from another, then there could be just some small exposition or short exposition where they're talking about it on the way there. Like maybe they're talking about the Red Wedding or something, and then we know that they're Freys. But I kind of hope that's what it is. I don't want her to see Brienne yet. I wanted to stick a little bit closer to the book where some more time has passed. I think it's going to be real interesting, too, to see the Brotherhood. That's how I have a feeling it's going to happen. I feel like we'll see whoever is the person that prompts this big reveal of Lady Stoneheart. I think that person or persons will be dealing with the Brotherhood first. And then, just like in the books, and she'll step out. So, but I mean, it's possible because Hot Pie did put Brienne and Pod on the trail of the Brotherhood, and we know that's who Lady Stoneheart is with. So, it would have been nice. I'm getting nervous now that you got me talking through it, because it would have been nice if it, like, at least through the season, we'd heard some things about what the Brotherhood is doing, and it could maybe even be like when stuff gets back to the capital at the small council where they're not sure how much of this is accurate because a lot of it sounds so unbelievable, like Dany's dragons and how big they are and how big her army is, the stuff at the wall. So it would have been kind of cool if maybe there were two mentions somewhere along the way that the Brotherhood is out there fucking shit up and they have this strange person with them or something. I don't know. That may be giving too much away. But now I'm getting nervous that they're not going to show her at all. So I hope you're happy because now you just got me freaked out before I go to bed. So anyway, he goes on to say, it makes for a good cliffhanger. And as a viewer, how cool would it be to have episodes where Brienne and Pod go around doing stuff for Lady Stoneheart next season? I would be on board with that. Listen, honestly, I don't really care who the person is. I really just hope that she shows up. If they got to, right, guys? Like, right? Because, like, there are certain characters that aren't in the show at all that book readers miss. Like, the one I think of off the top of my head is Cold Hands. People are so upset that Cold Hands hasn't made an appearance yet. I don't give a fuck about Cold Hands, but I'm all about Lady Stoneheart, so they better show her. And then he says, the showrunners have been speeding up the storyline so we get cool interaction from characters that may not have been together in the books, which I'm all for. Agreed. He goes, anyway, I hope I'm not rambling. Great show, and I look forward to listening to more from you and your crew. Thanks. Thank you, Jose. This really means a lot. Feedback really makes the show. It's like, I actually hate listening to myself talk, and I know I talk a lot, but I love talking about the things that I really, really love, that I get so geeked up over. And that's why I created the website. So that's fun, but it's definitely more fun when we know people are listening and they're interacting with us and engaging with us. Okay, so Devin's email says, can it be next Sunday already? I need to know how they will choose to end each storyline. I was somewhat surprised we didn't get the Stannis save this past episode. Yeah, I kind of thought that's what we were going to get, but I do think that this works better. So I'm fine with it. Da, 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 da. I'm wondering, with the whole Mance showdown still to come, they must mean they have to push Jon's election to next season, right? Yeah, I didn't expect Jon's election to go down this season at all. Like, I hadn't given much thought to exactly where every storyline ends, but I will be shocked and amazed if that happens this week. I don't think there's any way it will, or next week. Also, will Arya be on her way to Bravos, not choosing to give the Hound mercy? Will there be Tyrion stuff? Well, where will the Tyrion stuff end? So, okay, I'm going to give you my prediction. So, I think the Tyrion stuff is going to end with him being spirited away by Varys after he's killed Tywin and Shay. There is, on the scenes for next week, there is a shot of someone holding a crossbow, and like, it's almost like a first person shooter POV. And so you just see like what they see over the top of the crossbow as they're holding it in front of them, and you see their hands, kind of. It was really quick. Excuse me. And you see that person walking, like having that crossbow trained on a door. They're approaching a door really slowly. So he's totally killing Tywin next week. That's going to be awesome. I think Arya and the Hound. I think the scenes for next week, we show the Hound like facing off with someone, kind of standing tall. So I don't know if he's going to die in this episode. I kind of think maybe he won't. I think they love the actor. I think they love the character. And I think they're going to try to milk as much out of him and this pairing as they can. So I could totally see him dying in the season premiere of season 5. I really did think he was going to die this episode, but I don't know. I can't see his condition going from what you see in the previews, which looks pretty okay, to deteriorating and being left by Arya, unless there's a significant time jump within the episode, and they typically don't do that. So, Stannis is definitely going to arrive at the Wall, and that's how that will end. And I think that's how it's going to end with the Wall. And I think Dany's storyline is going to end when she realizes her motherfucking dragons have charbroiled that little boy, like, which I think is going to be weak, but I'm okay with that because you know what? They ended on her last season and that shit was super weak. So, I'm sure, did I miss anybody? I think that's it. I think, it's going to Tyrion storylines in there, the Wall, Stannis. I think that's everybody of importance, right? And Dany. So he finishes up by saying, all I know is I need answers, and I'm glad we get an extended episode next week because my book knowledge is ready to clash with my TV viewing. That's all I really have to say. Thanks again for what you do, and I can't wait to listen. Thank you, Devin. I hope you guys, my feedback, answered your questions and you enjoy it. So, okay, so I always tell myself we're never going to do a podcast that's longer than 2.5 hours long because ain't nobody got time for that shit. And we are at 2 hours and 21 minutes, so I'm going to end this here. I'm really looking forward to seeing Jon's reaction to some of his death predictions next week. And also keep in mind that though Game of Thrones has one more episode left, we actually have 2 podcasts left for Game of Thrones. We're going to do a regular episode for next week's finale, and then we'll do a wrap-up cast at some point during that week to say goodbye to Season 4 properly. So that's it. I will see you guys later. Thanks for listening.